All right, folks, we are live. Welcome back to the Pangburn Hangout. Today will be the first episode for the Atheist Nightmare with Josh. This is a new program on the Pangburn Hangout on Wednesday evenings. So you'll be able to always be guaranteed to be able to step in and have a conversation with a Christian fundamentalist on Wednesday nights. So Josh will be with us for a while hosting his show, so I hope you enjoy it. There will be a lot of presuppositional Christian apologetics, so we will be getting right down to the foundations of belief. And Josh, the Christian, will be hosting, and you guys will get to know him very well. If you do enjoy these conversations, please drop a like and share the video content. Most importantly, we would love for you to join us on the new Callin app. It's really easy to make an account. You can use an email or your phone. The app operates just fine on your smartphone. So you can find it by just typing in Callin, and you'll see Callin, the social podcasting app. So and on the Callin app, it will give you an option to actually connect with whoever's running any scheduled room. And we have new scheduled rooms every day. You can check the schedule if you just go to the Pangburn Hangouts channel page on Callin. And we have hosts from all different kinds of worldviews talking about different topics every single day. So I hope you make the Pangburn Callin experience your hub for expressing the ideas that mean the most to you. And that's kind of what we're doing in this constant war of ideas. But the conversation will be getting started in just a few minutes. Feel free to share this stream with your pals. But it's going to be the first episode of the Atheist Nightmare with Christian Josh, who will be arguing for our good buddy Yahweh. The up scroll on my mouse is just really bad right now. I'm going to give you guys the link so that you can, of course, call in and join us on the Callin app. Where did my live screen go? There we go. There's the link for anyone that wants to join us on the app. But we will be getting started in just about 5 minutes.
Well, all right, guys. Nightmare with myself. Thank you for the show. Through it together, and it's going to be. What about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Say something.
Yes, I can hear you.
Guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Nightmare with some more people as show, so bear with.
Oh, dude, it's doing it again, Josh.
Figure it out.
Maybe,
And today we're going to be talking about the Atheist Nightmare, and Josh wants to, more specifically Josh, he wants to discuss the Atheist Nightmare and why he chooses to believe that why he chooses to be a Christian and live his life according to God.
Madison, he might have a big thing prepared to say for this. So I think because he sent me the PDF for it. So I'm not saying you can't say anything. I'm just saying he definitely, when we get him fixed, he's got a lot of stuff to say. I know that. You're good, Madison.
I was just doing the introduction, helping him out a little bit.
That's all good. I just know he's been excited to present this information for a while.
I'm about to jack slap my own phone myself. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, Josh can't just leave the room. I don't know if it'll let him do that. I wonder what else he could do.
Do you think switching the positions, like the host,
I
and
don't
then
know.
he could?
It could be that he, like this guy says in the text, it could be that he's on like Wi-Fi connection, and maybe he needs to use his phone's actual internet connection, or something different could be happening.
Okay.
Who knows with phones? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're fickle mistresses.
Mm-hmm. Very fickle.
What about now?
It's a
Yeah,
bit better.
Is it going to stay better?
I hope so.
Oh my gosh,
I
crazy.
hope so.
Oh my
Let's
gosh, you guys are the best.
All right, let's try this again.
All right.
Okay.
I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. This is going to be great. Oh man. Well, welcome to the Atheist Nightmare with myself, Josh, Madison, Scott, and Thomas. Thank you all for joining us. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I think the first time I gave this spiel, I asked for your forgiveness when I screwed it up, and I did. So please accept my apologies. Yeah, we're going to talk about the show's titled The Atheist Nightmare. I can't claim credit for that. Travis came up with that. I think it's an awesome title. And we're just going to be talking about certain things to do with Christianity, kind of give anybody that's not a Christian kind of an avenue to, you can, I mean, I don't really mind if you attack Christianity necessarily. I won't take any offense to anything anybody says, but I can kind of tell you why I'm a Christian, and then we can talk about, you know, maybe why you think I shouldn't be. We've got some recommendations if there's kind of a lull in talking, as far as like what people maybe like Dan Barker, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, what they would say as their big, Chris Hitchens, what they would say are their big objections to Christianity. I mean, you know, Christopher Hitchens, the late Christopher Hitchens, great dude, awesome guy, did a great documentary with a pastor out of Idaho called Douglas Wilson. I mean, he would say like religion poisons everything. So we can talk through that. We can address all these issues. If we got callers, call in. Let us know what you think. I mean, I really don't mind talking about anything. I'll give you a little bit about me. I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian for a few years now. I'd consider myself kind of reformed in my view of salvation, so I might differ from some of the other Christians on the show or that are calling in. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I don't know, Madison, if you want to just give a little spiel about yourself, that'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why I am a Christian, I believe what I believe, is because God got me through some pretty dark times in my life, and I wouldn't have made it, without him. And whenever can I actually tell a story as to why I'm a Christian? And it
Yeah.
actually started from birth. The moment that I was born, I actually had a viral and bacterial infection / contamination in my blood whenever I was a baby. And I also, fun fact about me, guys, my heart is about 10% bigger than most people. So I have an enlarged heart. And so not only did I have a heart issue, but my blood was contaminated whenever I was first born, straight out of the womb. I already had something wrong with me.
Yeah.
So I was very, very sick. God, couldn't, could have taken me out if he wanted to. But my mother was a nervous wreck, and my grandmother was sitting there in the waiting room, and she heard an angel speak to him. Like, they hadn't even named me yet. They hadn't even did any of those things yet. And there was an angel that literally, like, she could see the angel and everything. Can't really describe what it looked like, but she could see it. And the angel's hand was over my grandmother and said, Madison will be fine. They did not even know they did not even know my name yet or any of that stuff. So if God, do not tell me that God does not exist, because he absolutely does. Because my parents, my mom and my grandmother didn't even name me yet, but yet the angel knew my name.
Wow.
So yeah, that's why I choose to be a Christian.
That is awesome. Well, thanks, Madison. Scott, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you believe, or really anything at all? Maybe not. Maybe Thomas?
Yeah, my phone's being a slow piece of crap. I'm sorry.
It's all
Scott,
good.
are you there? Scott. Oh my God.
He's probably on another show, guys. This is not.
He's the king of doing this.
Sorry, I had to
Yo, my
No,
boy.
there we go. There we
the
go.
old restroom.
He asked you to tell us a little bit about yourself, Scotty.
Like what?
Yes,
Like
mainly.
my position
Like
on
your
this,
beliefs,
or
I guess.
Sure,
Yeah, your beliefs.
Yeah.
I don't accept anything. I don't accept any strong claims without strong evidence, I guess. So I mean, making a claim that there's a God to me would require a lot of evidence. It's different than saying there's a loaf of bread at the grocery store. That's a lot easier to believe because there's a plethora of evidence that there's loaves of bread at the grocery store. With a God, there's literally no evidence.
Okay. Cool, Thomas. You want to talk to us about a little bit about what you believe and why you believe it?
What do I believe? Such a deep question. Yeah, I could pontificate about stupid abstractions forever. The clear and short of it is I don't know, and I know that I don't know almost certainly. It's kind of a play on Travis's virtues, but I've always been like that. I don't absolutely know if I know anything. However, if somebody were to put a gun to my head and say, you either choose theism or atheism or I'm going to kill you, I would have to say, honest, if I were being intellectually honest, I am an atheist on that one specific topic. But I'm not an anti-theist. I'm not opposed to the idea of God. I love talking about the idea of God. I love the philosophy of religion, so that's all a part. I grew up with religion, so it's a part of who I am. It's a part of who made me who I am.
For sure.
But I'm also agnostic, and that deals with knowledge. So
Mm.
I'm pretty much agnostic about everything. So I guess you
Mhm.
could label me an agnostic atheist. So
All
that's
right.
it.
Well, right on. That's awesome.
All right. Thank
I
you, bud.
saw, yeah, thank you. I saw Lindsay was asking about if we can prove God or not. Do you want to call in, Lindsay? Want to chat about it? I don't actually even know how to bring people on.
I think Lindsay usually communicates with us through text. At least that's what I've seen throughout most of our episodes. I would love
Yeah.
for Lindsay, if
Okay.
she, he,
And I think
whoever, I
they
wish
have
they
to
would call in.
request. I think there has to be, there's like a caller queue where if somebody wants to call in, there's like buttons that they can push
Yeah,
to be into the caller queue. So that, and
yeah,
then you have to press a blue button and with a plus sign, with a white plus sign in the middle that says take next caller.
Okay.
And
yep. I'll show you how to do it right
that'll
now.
just happen
Okay.
like an assembly line. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey, Scott, thanks for calling in.
Yep, so that's how you do it. And then you
What
can
are you
also
wearing?
click on my name. You can click on my name and say invite up to speakers.
I gotcha.
Yeah, just click on somebody's name if you want to do anything. Like, you have the moderator power, so if somebody starts getting too
Oh, sweet.
cheeky, you can mute them.
That never happens, Thomas.
You've got Jason in here.
Okay.
Jason
Yeah,
is
that's
our next
happened
caller,
to me
guys.
a couple of times.
All right, let's bring him on.
Yep.
Jason, welcome to the show. What's up?
Hey, what's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, thank you.
What do you got?
So-
You got some thoughts on problems with Christianity? You want to tell us about yourself? Where do you want to go?
Well, I mean, just as a background, I'm an atheist. I probably would
Okay.
also probably consider myself an agnostic atheist.
Great.
I don't see sufficient evidence for a god or gods, so I don't believe in a god or gods. But there could be a god, but I just don't see sufficient evidence for that. So at this point, I don't believe in a god.
Okay.
So I guess my question would be, I know you guys kind of mentioned a little bit about your backgrounds. I'm curious, what's your best evidence for God?
That's a good question. Go for it, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would come from what would be called more of a presuppositional approach to apologetics. Apologetics being kind of the art and science of defending the Christian faith. We get that out of the Greek word apologia, meaning reasoned defense. And I would take that at a 1 Peter 3:15, that all Christians are really commanded and charged to defend the faith, but to do so in a gentle and respectful manner. And just respectfully to you in your position, please don't take anything I say as offensive, but I would say that God is not, we're not commanded necessarily to give, non-believers proof that God exists. I'm happy to do it, but essentially what we run into as Christians, the danger is that we elevate the atheist or the agnostic or the Buddhist or somebody else that doesn't believe in Christianity above God. And I would never want to do that, mainly because I believe that, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior and he's worthy of praise. But to answer your question, what is the best evidence for God? I would say that the best evidence for him, existing is that without him you couldn't prove anything. And by that I mean, even when you're talking about giving evidence and taking evidence, there's all sorts of presuppositions that come into play, meaning you're presupposing truth, knowledge, ethics, with even asking for evidence. And I would ask, how in a not God or anti-God worldview do you justify those claims and understand those to be, true?
Sure. I mean, in a presuppositionalist position, I'm imagining your position is that I, as an atheist, I can't justify reason or intelligibility. That I don't know where those things come from. That ultimately I have to make certain assumptions
Yeah, that's
about
right
that.
on.
And I would say you have to make the exact same assumptions. You have to make those assumptions, but you're taking a position that what with 100% certainty, I'm imagining that your reasoning and intelligibility come from the revelation of God.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, but you have no evidence of that. You could be deluded. You could be, you could just be wrong, but you have no way of knowing that. So we're both at the same place. I take a position that I think that my reason and intelligibility work pretty well, and that we have evidence that they work, but we have no evidence that God exists or God is the foundation for reason or intelligibility. But you're the one making the assumption of that. And so that's why I think my position is a stronger one, and that your position is one, respectfully, you're making assumptions around God's existence and the revelatory nature of God when you have no evidence of that. You're just making that assumption.
Yeah, and for sure, I understand. But when you use words like deluded and be wrong, we would have no way of knowing that. You're taking a position of reason and intelligibility that seem to work well for you, and there's no evidence. Again, we're presupposing truth, knowledge, and morality. And I'm saying that without starting with God, not that we can use our senses, memory, and reasoning, truth, knowledge, morality to get to God. I'm saying that if we don't start with Him, His very nature, character, and being, that you're left in a viciously circular kind of reasoning system. And I would say that that's wrong, because God does not lie, right? God is not a God of confusion, right? But for whatever your standard is, it seems like there's really no solid foundation, if I'm understanding you correctly, that is, to even ask me for evidence.
Well, I mean, ultimately, like the aspects of hard solipsism, or the kind of infinite regress aspects are certainly an issue with somebody who does not have a faith position. I cannot, I have to make certain assumptions about my reasoning and intelligibility. I could be in the Matrix. I could be a brain in a vat. I could be whatever. I don't know that that's not the case. I have memories from 10 years ago. Those memories could have been created in the last 10 seconds. I have no way of determining that. But my position is that you have no way of determining that. You're making the statement that that God is the foundation for those things, and I'm saying you don't have. We're both on the same playing field. That ultimately we can't. There's some things that are hidden from us in terms of our knowledge, like where reasoning and rationality comes from. But so I think it's unreasonable. And I know you're going to say, well, you're using reason to justify what you're saying. But ultimately, we are left with trying to make evaluations of the world and trying to come up with a method that can evaluate the world in a systematic way. And I think that the scientific method is an excellent and not foolproof, but an excellent way of evaluating the world. But I don't think that a presuppositionalist view of the world, to just say God is the foundation and I'm just going to have faith in that, that makes sense. I don't think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say we both have faith positions. You just said you have to make certain assumptions. An assumption is a faith-based claim. You would have no facts or evidence based on an assumption.
Not true.
And then if you say have to, by what standard? Who says you have to make certain assumptions?
Well, I mean, maybe we have different definitions of faith, because my view of faith is to have a position where you have no supporting evidence. You're taking a position, like to say, I mean, maybe the concept of blind faith is somewhat redundant, but to have faith is to believe in something without having evidence. And I don't have faith in my positions. I actually do have evidence for those positions, but I don't have 100% certainty of those positions. But I think that I have ample evidence. But on your position, I don't think that you do have evidence. You're only just saying that God did this, but you don't really have any evidence that God did that.
Yeah, I think the evidence is kind of in the impossibility of the contrary there, because you just said that you have to make certain assumptions. You just said that you could be in the Matrix. You don't know if your memories were created 10 seconds ago. But I'm assuming you don't live like that, right? You don't live like the principle of induction is not true. You live as though you are certain of it. But then you kind of... I'm sorry, go ahead, bud.
No, I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. It's a great discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say that I would say that I am not 100% certain, but I am very confident in certain viewpoints. Like I'm confident that the sun will rise tomorrow. Now, will the sun rise tomorrow? it's possible that the sun will blow up tomorrow and it won't rise. So I can't be 100% certain, just like science typically doesn't take 100% certainty positions. We look at like we have high level of confidence in something. I personally think that that's a more intellectually honest position to take. So I'm willing
Sure.
to admit that I can't be confident that 100% certain in some things. But it sounds like you're saying you are 100% certain that God is the foundation for intelligibility and rational thought. You are 100% certain of that. You can't possibly. So it's impossible. Like it's logically impossible for you to be deluded and to be wrong about that.
I'd say it's very possible for me to be wrong about certain things. However, I would say it is impossible for God to be wrong about certain things that he has revealed. And as it says in the Bible, he has revealed certain things to us so that we can know them for certain. And then I would say that most of us live our lives as if we know things are certain, right? Kind of like you just said, you're 80% sure, that the sun's gonna rise again, but it could blow up. I don't think it's gonna blow up tomorrow. And I don't live my life like I think it's going to blow up tomorrow.
I agree. I don't live my life that it's going to blow up tomorrow either. But there is an aspect of probability to that. Yeah. So I'm not going to say that I'm 100% certain that the sun will rise tomorrow. But you're saying now. I know you're like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you you personally have a 100% certainty that God is the foundation of intelligibility and rational thought. That those things come from God.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't be wrong about that.
I could be wrong, but God cannot be wrong.
Well, but could you be wrong about that, but about your position that you're taking, that God is the foundation of intelligibility and rational thought? You could be wrong.
Yeah,
or not,
on that specific claim, no. I'm 100% certain about that.
You could not be wrong. Okay. So don't you have some concern about that type of a belief where you have no evidence really for that you're just going to have faith in that doesn't that to me seems to be completely antithetical to kind of an intellectual assessment of our world around us. I just don't understand how you could be 100% certain.
Yeah, absolutely. I would again say I do have evidence for the existence of God. I would say you don't like that evidence, but I would still say I have evidence, just like I don't think you have a solid foundation for making any of the claims you do, but you do have a foundation. And then I would also say about kind of like this push for us to be like have an intellectual assessment of the things around us. Where does that standard come from? Like, why is it better to be intellectually assessing things versus not intellectually assessing things? Like, where does that standard come from?
I mean, well, we look at the world around us, and we've over like hundreds and thousands of years, we've developed methodologies that are tested to evaluate our world. And like an example of the scientific method of being able to, collect information and observations and form hypotheses and test those hypotheses and repeat them we have found to be a very good mechanism for determining how our world works. And just like, I'm sure you're aware of the God of the gaps fallacy, that in the past, there have been many situations where people have thought God was the origins for a certain outcome. And then we discover that there are actual naturalistic mechanisms for that.
Sure.
So I think that the scientific method is a good technique for that. I mean, ultimately, when you say, well, how do you know that your rationality is correct? I once again will agree that I can't be 100% certain of that. I agree with you. It's a when presuppositionalists bring this topic up of saying, how do you know where it comes from? Are you certain about that? How do you know you're certain of that? I think that those are good questions to ask. But ultimately, I don't think that your position is in any way, shape, or form at the same level of my position. You're going to attack the one facet that I can't prove, but ultimately you can't do the same, and you have zero real, at least in my perspective, you don't really have any evidence for God.
Okay.
So
well, hey, Jason, I'm I think we messed up Sheila, and she didn't. She got back out. I'm going to bring up the speakers, and we'll kind of let Madison, Thomas, and Scott kind of give their 2 cents, and then we can
course.
revisit the claim that my position is not on the same level, attacking the one Faz at zero evidence. Yeah, sound good, bud?
That sounds
Awesome,
fine.
man. Hold on 1 second.
Just real quick, Josh, I did want to say though, at one point you said you wouldn't like the evidence, but you didn't give the evidence. To me, it seems like you're making the assumption he wouldn't like the evidence. I would say if you're going to make that claim, just give the evidence, right?
Sure. I think what I was saying is that, according to the presuppositional approach, the evidence, the strongest evidence, right? I think there's more than enough evidence, but I'm going to stick with the presuppositional approach before we get into. Hey, Scott, did you not come up into the speakers thing?
No, I'm in the speakers.
It's Jason.
I'm sorry,
Jason's the one down
Jason,
there.
sorry.
Oh, I'm still here. Yeah.
Just accept that thing. I'm inviting you to speak, so just accept it. You'll pop back up into the speakers thing.
Oh.
Yeah, so about kind of the presuppositional approach to the evidence for God, the very fact that we're even asking for evidence is evidence, right? That's kind of what I would say, and I'm happy to expound on that. I didn't mean like he didn't like it, like
No, yeah,
in an offensive way.
Yeah. I didn't think you were saying it that way. Like, because you make that statement, you say, I think the reason that we can ask for evidence is evidence. I mean, like, can you actually explain that, how that's evidence?
Yeah, I don't think the reason that we can ask for evidence is evidence. I think the reason that you are asking for evidence is evidence. So the reason that you're asking for evidence presupposes very specific things that are fundamental and vital to your worldview. So your worldview being metaphysically, how do you view reality, right? Epistemologically, how do you understand your theory of knowledge, right? Rationalism, empiricism, or revelational epistemology, and then ethics. What is your view? How do you differentiate between good and evil? Because we all somehow view reality. We all somehow know how we know things, even if it's maybe not as solid as others. And then we all have a system of ethics or morality, and we do impart that every day on other people. So what I'm saying is that unless you start with the Christian God and his very nature, character, and being, and what he said in the Bible and revealed himself as to how we're to live, you're not able to account for why you know things. You're not able to account for your moral position, right? I'm not saying that nobody else is moral, that nobody else doesn't know anything, or that nobody else can understand reality. I'm just saying if you don't start with the Christian God, you don't really know that for certain. But hey, we got Dave here.
Yeah.
You want to say something, Scott? I'm sorry.
I just gonna say, like, I guess I still just don't see where the evidence is that, because to me it just sounds like you're just saying you have to start with this, but there's and if you just take the stance that like no, I don't have evidence for it, this is just what I believe, I'm totally fine with that. It's like, to me, I guess, like, that's not my definition or my standard of what I consider to be evidence.
For sure. Let's get Dave up here, and I'll write that down, Scott, and we'll revisit it.
Sure.
Dave, what you got? Yeah, what's up, dude?
Yeah, I'm really interested to, and I've just been listening really recently to you guys going back and forth a little bit on this kind of presuppositional approach that you've got.
Sure.
What I've never really understood about that approach is what exactly the theistic hypothesis has to offer here that that none of the other hypotheses do. Because if the idea is that if you start with the Christian God or any God, that you can account for these things, how does that work exactly? Or because I feel like, I could say something like, well, I mean, if you start with the fact that there's actually a universe and there's actually laws of physics and that light actually goes into my eyes and sound bounces off my eardrums and that actually works, then I can say that all of my beliefs are justified if I start with that. What really is the difference?
Yeah, I would just want to offer a loving correction. It's just the Christian God. I don't believe in any other, the God of Mormonism, God of Jehovah's Witnesses, the millions of gods. Okay. I would stick with just the triune God of the Bible, as far as this kind of approach and understanding. And then I think it's different because you can actually account for any of the stuff you just said. Like you kind of just talked about how the light hits your eyes and your eyes see things. The question is,
Yeah.
how do you know that, right? How do you fundamentally, epistemologically know that the light is hitting your eyes? And then how do you know what to do with that? How do you know how to live? You do it
Well,
and you know things, but how?
but what are you asking me for? Because it sounds like you're asking me to give you another thing that I know, like another belief. Like if I asked you, well, how do you know that there's a Christian God? Like what are you gonna say? So if I say, okay, like we both believe in gravity, and ultimately you go back far enough, you're gonna say it's because you ground epistemology in the existence of God or something.
Sure.
And I say, well, how do you know that there's a God? What are you gonna say at that point?
Well, I think the Christian approach is that we know who God is because he's revealed himself to us. There's multiple ways that he's done that. He's done that, in the biblical times as far as like kind of supernatural, miraculous things that were demonstrated in time and history. And then through the creation of the Bible, right, he tells us who he is, what he's done, who we are identity-wise, and then how we're to live, as Francis Schaeffer would put it. So I think the big difference is we have kind of what I would say a more solid foundation to understand what gravity is and why it will hold true yesterday, today, and tomorrow, right? And then we'll know how to use gravity, in scientific experiments or for kind of the greater good. I would push back on that and say, like, how do you know gravity is true and how do you know it will hold? Kind of like what Jason was saying. We don't really, he does know, but doesn't know 100% if things are going to be the same tomorrow. Specifically, I think with the sun rising was the example.
Well, that's the problem with induction, but
Yeah, that's Bertrand Russell's problem, but that's not God's problem with induction.
but the problem of induction isn't that I can't make up a solution to it by making a bunch of ontological commitments. Like I can say, well, let me just buy a bunch of ontology. Like the problem of the problem of induction isn't that I can't make a bunch of metaphysical assumptions and solve the problem of induction. It's an epistemologic problem. It's how do you know? It's not like you can say, well, if there was a God that guaranteed all of these things, then these things would all be guaranteed. And yeah, I agree with that. But it's also true that if there are fundamentally all these laws of physics, then fundamentally there's all these laws of physics. I can buy into something from the get-go that gets me the result. The question is, how do you know that that's actually the case in the background? Because I could make up a bunch of stories off the top of my head about what's going on, and I just don't see like why one is any better than the other.
Well, then why don't you start with that? Make up a story about how you can answer the principle of induction.
Yeah, so I'm going to say there actually are quantum fields that have these mathematical properties. Those actually exist, and and the reason that I know those things exist is because they've manifested themselves. Like they've manifested themselves to my senses. They force me to acknowledge their existence by manifesting themselves in front of me in a way that I can't be wrong, because they actually exist, and there actually is light going into my eyes, and my brain actually is doing computation or whatever. And because all that is true, now I have a grounds for epistemology, because all of those things are true. And I don't see how that's meaningfully different from saying because there's a God that's guaranteeing these things.
Yeah, so I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd stick with your train of thought there. So because there's quantum fields that have manifested themselves to you, and you now know that through your senses, memory, and reasoning. How do you know your senses, memory, and reasoning aren't lying to you? Kind of like what Jason pointed out. He has to make certain assumptions about his senses, memory, and reasoning, and I think other atheists and agnostics do as well. How do you account for that?
Well, the reason that I'm accounting for, I'm taking an externalist approach. I'm saying that there's something external to myself that exists, and because of its properties, the way that it exists, it is guaranteeing my beliefs in exactly the same way that a God would, if he existed and he was orchestrating all of this. He would be guaranteeing my beliefs. The question in both cases is, because I kind of feel like you're asking me to give you an internal account for how I know that my senses are working properly or something. But if I ask you the same question, you'll appeal to God's existence, which is not an internal; it's an external object.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am asking you. I'm really just asking you, how you know what you know in kind of a little more of a specific manner, right? You said
Yeah, but
kind of it and he guarantees your belief. So what is it and he, right? I would say that God does it, right? God is God. God reveals it to us. That's our
yeah,
standard of epistemology. But you're saying the
yeah.
same thing.
So
You're just not calling it God. So how does that it or he manifest itself to you to tell you that your senses, memory, and reasoning are reliable? You're not in the
yeah,
matrix. And what if they were lying to you? Would that be a problem? Because how do you differentiate between good and evil?
yeah.
Does
But
it
there's a
make sense
sleight
to
of
you?
hand that's going on here because you didn't give me another
Mm-hmm.
belief that you have. You appealed to
Sure.
an object that exists, and the properties of that object are guaranteeing the validity of your sense perception. Let's just stick with that one. God's existence is guaranteeing your epistemology.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's not you or any of your beliefs. It's something else. It's external to you.
Yeah, something
And
transcends
I'm
us, which is kind of like what you
yeah.
were getting at.
And what I'm saying is I'm giving exactly the same answer. It's just that the
Mm-hmm.
object that I'm positing is a different object, and the way that it's guaranteeing my beliefs is slightly different. But functionally, structurally, I'm giving exactly the same externalist answer. I'm saying
Yeah.
there are all these quantum fields, and because of the ways they interact, you get chemistry and biology and evolution and brains that do rational reasoning, blah, 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 blah. And it grounds out in the existence of these external things.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that's the same answer.
I would say it's a little bit of a different answer. I want to give Madison, Thomas, or Scott a chance to reply. I wrote down what you said, and I definitely want to get back to it.
Okay.
Scott, go ahead if you want to, bud. Madison.
Oh man, this one's all you. I got that last one.
Madison.
At this point, I'm just here for support.
Well, the funny thing is we've got a lot of callers. So Josh, you're popular.
Have a
I would say bring Dave up to speak, and I think that's the maximum amount of speakers
Okay.
we can have, guys. Because when it gets more than that, it gets kind of difficult. So we'll bring Dave up to speak, and then get who's next in line. Sheila.
Sheila.
Okay, Sheila, what's up?
Hey, it's been a while since I came to the Pangburn Hangout, and I thought this was a good subject. So I'm glad to hang in. I've been doing like this 100 days of Callin, so I've been podcasting every day. So I haven't wanted to participate in other people's shows, which suck. But Pangburn is awesome, and I'm really happy to participate. So I kind of gonna stir up a little mire here, and I'm just going to ask
what does mire mean?
mud.
I never paid attention in school that
muckiness. Mud.
I'm gonna mucky muck a little bit.
Okay.
So here's the jacks I'm gonna throw on the floor. Is that, why do they need God not to be real? Why do they need that? Or why is it? What is? Okay, the impetus is to get you to prove God to them, which is a whole power trip in and of itself. Prove God to me. Make God come to me. So that's why I'm not interested in atheists. Not because I think that they're necessarily bad people, but they want God to DoorDash it to them. And I'm not interested.
Damn, I've never heard it put that way before. Okay.
I've never really catering, why don't you prove your love to me kind of thing. And I'm just not interested in that perspective, because God has always been kind of like the higher than me type of person. And God is a person to me. I'm not trying to be critical of these individuals whom I've never spoken to and do not know, but it has just been my generalized experience dealing with atheists, that they want personal catering, and they want you to, every Christian to become like this prove it to me farm for their beliefs, which is a form of kind of weird submissionist kind of, science, rather than listen. I don't owe you anything. Listen, you either get God or you don't. And if you go to hell, I'm sorry. You know, I'm just,
Ooh.
and
I'll,
I'm sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got something I definitely want to add to this.
Yeah, I would agree with you and offer a loving correction, Sheila. I do agree that non-believers or non-Christians are drawn to spirituality because I think that we were all created in the image of God and we were created to worship Him. I think that some people deny that more than others, but not all atheists are exactly, hey, just give me God. I think it's to kind of go against what you said. It's our job as Christians to engage them in everyday life and truth-seeking relationships and tell them what God says, even if that could be a bit harsh and even if it, they don't agree or we can articulate our position well. I think that's kind of what we're called to do as Christians. So I would agree and disagree with you at the same time, but good points.
Yeah, that was and by the way, Sheila,
Well,
that was
Hey,
a really
real quick, Sheila. I'm sorry. Let Scott get in here real quick because he had a point to make. I'm sorry.
yeah. But
yeah. I mean,
hang on in just a second. This won't take long.
How many times are we going
Um,
to say hang on? Jason, say hang on. Just
Hang
kidding.
on.
Go ahead, Madison, and then Scott.
by the
and then
way,
we'll-
Sheila, that was I have never in my life ever have heard somebody put it that way before, and that was in a couple of instances that was pretty spot on, and that was actually kind of a badass way to articulate that. I'm very very I now have a different defending point now. Thank you for giving me that, Sheila.
All right.
okay,
Go, Scott.
okay, yeah. So number one, Josh is running a show on this. That in and of itself is asking people to come and talk about this, about his belief. That in and of itself is inviting the question of people asking to show the evidence. Number one. Number two, if anybody tells you, if you're talking to somebody and somebody says, "Oh, I have an answer for you that I've got." A surefire way for you to make $1 million? Are you just going to beg? And then you ask them to say, "Oh, can you show me how that works?" And then be like, "Well, that's not my problem. I'm telling you that you can make $1 million, and you asking me questions is attacking me somehow about my claim that I'm offering a way for you to make $1 million." Like that in and of itself, it doesn't make much sense from my point of view.
Well, I mean, am I selling something, or is this something that's out there? I mean, people believe in God. That's kind of part of our humanity. I mean, I don't think I'm selling anything to anybody. I mean, I exchange, belief systems like,
Yeah.
okay, here's my address if you want to come pick up the brownies, and this is what I believe. So I think it's pretty
Yes, but
pedestrian to share those things these days. I mean, we're all part of a society. We end up sharing what we believe as a second nature. I show up every morning at 8:30 a.m. to first period. My hair is brown. These things, right? You just know certain things about me. And if you believe in God or don't believe in God, if you're the kid who decides that they don't want to believe in God, I've been hassled so much by people who want extra attention because I am a Christian, just so they can pull me down for narcissistic reasons, that I can sit here and kind of be a little bit rankly. I have a burden to deal with non-believers. It's a burden for me. I mean, I will tell them what I believe. I don't resist them, but I will tell them begrudgingly these days that what I believe, and I behave imperfectly, by the way. So it's not
So
really
do
like
I. Very
yeah,
much so.
it's not like the cleanest cell in the world, Scott. Because I
Right.
drop
yeah,
a few F-bombs here and there on my program, so it's not
Ew.
it's not like a clean cell or
yeah.
anything.
I drop a
Neither
lot
is
of
It's
F
my
like an
bombs.
shows. Have
extraction
you seen
process.
my shows?
No.
Hey,
Hey,
Sheila.
Madison, I think Jason wants to say something real quick to Sheila.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple things. One, that at least in the United States, it's a predominantly Christian country. So atheists are a small percentage. We are the minority. So when we go out, most people are religious, and so we oftentimes feel ostracized. Like look at the political office. Most people could never run for office, and they say they were an atheist. They would be ostracized. So I'm not quite sure I agree with the fact of this kind of persecuting Christian aspect, because I think Christians at least in the United States, and I think most other countries where other religions are in control, that those who do not believe in a religion are oftentimes the ones that are not held in the best light. And then the other thing I was just going to say is, at least in terms of just like what kind of going to what Scott was saying, if somebody makes a positive claim that something exists or something is true, with the way that science works is that we develop a hypothesis to be able to attempt to falsify that.
It's not a scientific matter, Jason, and that's
Okay,
that's kind
fair
of
enough.
like my unique perspective is that this isn't a matter of science for me,
Okay.
to me.
Okay.
And it's anthropology. That's as scientific as it's gonna get.
Well,
but as far as like personal beliefs, it's like it's kind of like art perspective. I've mentioned this before in other programs. That it's like art perspective. Like if you see things in a cubist rendering, but you're looking at the same bowl of fruit, I'm not going to apologize to you because you don't see it in a cubist perspective. I'll be like, oh, okay, well, that's you, Jason. Do you?
Look,
you know?
I have no problem with that. Like if a Christian or another religious person wants to come up and say, look, I believe in God. I don't have any actual evidence that God exists. I have faith that God exists. I feel that in my heart. That's totally fine. You are absolutely within your rights to have that. But when somebody
it's
says,
probably going to happen anyway, Jason. I'm just letting you know. Don't cry at night. It's going to happen anyway.
What's going to happen anyways?
I'm probably going to believe anyway. I mean,
Sheila, let's.
If an atheist sits on me and puts rocks on my head tomorrow, I will still, it probably won't do very much. I'll probably still believe in God.
Sheila, I got Jonathan and Tristan waiting. Let's give you another few seconds here to speak your mind, and then I'm gonna bump up Jonathan.
Sheila, you can also jump back in the call queue, just to come right back in if you'd like to.
It's okay, guys. I'm not here to heckle your atheist, but I just wanted you to know that Christian persecution is at times very real. And just because Jason,
there are Christians that get their heads chopped off in certain countries just for believing in
well,
faith.
You could get your head chopped off by the New York Times if you say it wrong. So
yeah, but
I mean,
Christians persecute other people too. Let's not get that confused either.
Dude, they persecute each other. So
yeah.
I mean, this is a big drama. This is like a nighttime soap opera where we're going. So I'm gonna jump out.
All right, Sheila. Great. Awesome, Sheila. You're the best. Thank you.
I swear sometimes with Christians, it's like one big soap opera thing. It's called The Last Days of Our Lives.
All right, we got Jonathan.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up?
I love Sheila's show, but I just, that's all bullshit. Because if I say that dragons exist, and you say no, they don't, and you say prove dragons exist, and my response to that is to say, oh, what a chore it is to deal with this narcissist who needs me to prove to them that dragons exist. God, why should I have to do that? No, the burden of proof is on the person making the positive claim. And it's not just science. It's if you believe in reincarnation, and your belief in reincarnation is causing you to do irrational things, like kill people because you think the cows that they're eating are your mother come back from the dead, it's my problem now. And the Christian fascist, Christian nationalist movement here, and I'm not saying that's all Christians, but the through line of Christianity to me has not been a great one. I have grandparents who are very Christian, and they're not the most forgiving people in the world. The only good thing about Christianity is forgiveness, and they're the worst at it. They're the least forgiving people that I know. So,
I'm so
secondly,
sorry. I'm so
it's
sorry.
Yeah, well, I am too.
Yeah.
But that's where they come from, and that's how they are, and they can't forgive anything. They love to judge people for wearing too many colors or talking differently. I have a lot of competing Protestant congregations in town.
Here's the thing, Jonathan. I think it's because they're from the Church of Nicholas something. They're from the, you're going to hell. Like that's just how they're.
My grandmother's a Unitarian, and she's actually really cool. Yeah. And very forgiving. She forgives everybody everything.
Yeah, they're probably independent fundamental Baptists, right?
Yeah, so I don't associate with those.
The point is there's no correlation between the defining positive characteristic of Christianity and people who call themselves Christians. The correlation is negative, if anything.
Yeah,
so
I guess
it's all about
my question would
how
be,
you frame your thinking.
Yeah, my question would be, by what standard are you judging these other people calling themselves Christians but not acting like Christians? clearly you're starting with your own worldview and your
Well, that was
foundation of
the
knowledge
next
or
point I was going to make.
morality.
Actually, there was three.
Oh,
So
sure.
that was
Go
one.
ahead.
Number
Yeah, go
two
ahead, man.
was number two was just that it's worth noting that the smartest Christians like Soren Kierkegaard and Immanuel Kant knew better than to try to reconcile their faith with reason. It's not reasonable to believe in these things, and they know that. But I don't think you really choose what you believe. I'm sure you've heard of Pascal's wager. You guys seem somewhat educated. But there's a hidden premise in Pascal's wager, and that's that you choose what you believe. Because if it's like, why not believe it if the cost is nil if you're wrong, and the cost is everything if you're right? But that hidden premise is that you choose what you believe. But I could not sit here and make myself believe in dragons. I just can't. You don't choose what you believe. You believe what you can't help but believe. And you don't have to sit here and be like, how do I prove it? Or how do I make other people prove it? And I'm not going to judge you for believing what you believe because you didn't make that choice. You believe what you can't help but believe too. And the third thing was what you're going back to what you were just asking me. What makes a person Christian? Because Ludwig Wittgenstein, another philosopher, he says, I'm a very Christian person. But he doesn't actually believe literally in the sacrament. But he says, I frame my thinking like a Christian. He thinks that the New Testament, the sort of revelation, sorry, I'm burping in the microphone. The revelation on the cross is one of, how did Zizek put it? The book of Mark has this line where he says, oh my God, why have you abandoned me? And he's like, this is the key. Yeah, why have you forsaken me? And it's like, God himself had to become a human to firsthand experience, or at least get a fresh memory, if you like, of just how fragile and weak we are, so that even God, can be driven to a point of blasphemy on the cross to say something like that, because he's 9 hours in the sun, bleeding out of his ribs, bleeding out of his head, dehydrated, delirious, and he's like, I can't believe this is happening, but he gets his wits back rather quickly. It says, oh, forgive them, they know not what they do. But these things juxtapose each other. And so if you look at through the New Testament and that moment when God forgives us more easily because of how weak we are and how just fragile, and whereas in the Old Testament he was very judgy and not very lenient.
Well, you
And
have to have. There's
he's a
this
Christian.
thing called grace. There's this thing, and I'm sorry, Josh, but there's this thing called grace and truth. You have to have a combination of both. You have to
That's the
warn
Calvinist
people.
versus the Anglican debate right there, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to
Well,
have.
not exactly.
Well,
Grace
there's
versus
two different.
works.
Here's the thing. There's two different types of churches. There's one church that called where they practice like, oh, it doesn't matter what you do. It's okay. God will always, it's okay. It's okay. And then there's another one where they're very, very strict. They're very legalistic in their beliefs. They take the things very literally. They're like, I swear, if you do this little thing, you're going to hell. Like what the independent fundamentalist Baptists believe. Like that there's a line. It's just like with parenting, right? I'm pretty sure Josh definitely knows a thing or two about this.
We'll see.
You have to know you have to know where you fit into. Like, you can't be, this laissez-faire, let your kids, do whatever they want. However, you have to give them the space and the ability to make mistakes because they're human beings. They're just developing. They're either just developing or they're human beings. They're going to screw up. They're going to fall down. They're going to make mistakes, but you have to know exactly how to pick back up again and keep going, because that's what faith is like. That's what the relationship with God is like. It's a race. It honestly is a race. And I'm pretty sure Josh would agree with me on this. It's a race that you constantly are running in.
Yeah, I think to go back to kind of some of the things you were saying, like the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. I would hold you to your, epistemological, veritological, metaphysical.
Oh, well, my
ethical
epistemological
standard.
position is you can't know that. You can't teach a pigeon calculus and you can't know anything about God because you're an ape, like with thumbs and a language. You're not
Sure,
that
but
special.
I guess what I'm saying is that's not an epistemological position. That's a claim, right? And then we're talking about Christian nationalism, Christian fascism. We kind of need to define our key terms here, and then we need to get into what you really believe about ethics and why is that wrong, right? You're saying the only thing good about Christianity is forgiveness. Again, that's a moral
The only
claim,
dogma that
one
came
with
out
it,
of
which
it
I don't think
I
that you
liked
can
was
back up
forgiveness.
with
Yeah.
any sort of standard. And then we're talking about Pascal's wager, which I wouldn't necessarily agree as Christian, although a lot of Christians use it. So I would agree with you on that. And then the third thing about kind of what makes a person Christian, I'm talking about the sacraments of these guys, like that, like they're probably not Christians. And then if we're
The
talking
most
about
Christian
kind
people I
of
met
God,
don't call themselves that and don't believe in Jesus, but they act in the way that Jesus might.
sure, and then I would say that's more of a sweeping generalization fallacy, one which I would kind of want to explain, like
Well,
most
it's anecdotal. I'm
people.
just talking about people I know.
Sure, I mean, so who do you know? You don't have to give me names, but like you're saying that 20 people that claim Christianity act in a certain way. Again, I would hold you
I
to your
grew up in the
standard and say,
Methodist church here.
okay,
Oh,
It's it's the oldest building on this side of the Mississippi, I heard. The
okay,
oldest church anyway. It's really nice. Big Tiffany glass windows. But then
yeah.
my grandmother came from southeast Kentucky, and they're like people who handle snakes and shake and speak in tongues
don't
and
tell
like
me that.
So those are more
yeah,
charismatic
there's
in
some
nature,
old timey
which,
religion in my family.
yeah. But to go back to what you're saying about God having to come down and be His own Son, and then He says, "Why have you forsaken me?" So He's committing
Yeah, that was
blasphemy.
Slavoj
That's
Žižek telling that story that way. I thought it was a pretty interesting take.
Is
yeah. So
Zizek
I
the one
think
that sounds like Sylvester the cat?
He sounds like I'm Slovenian,
Sorry,
and
sorry. Go ahead.
he says like a Slovenian with Tourette's. So yes, that's like this.
all right. What I would say is that's a fulfillment of Psalm 22:1, right? That's not Jesus asking him why his father has forsaken him. That's talking about more specific things in the Old Testament and prophecies that are being fulfilled in the crucifixion. So that's not a, the son blaspheming the father. Right? I just wanted to clear that up.
Well, then that completely destroys the whole that the New Testament is a revelation of forgiveness by God of people, because it only serves to reinforce that claim.
Well, I think you're starting with the wrong foundation to even make that claim. But I would say, who says that the New Testament is about forgiveness?
I heard where your calls in earlier about what you're saying about foundation. I mean, that sword cuts both ways, man, because
Sure.
your premises of your arguments that you were making earlier assume God's existence. You're sneaking the
Absolutely.
conclusion into the premises. You're always like, oh, I just start from the point of view that God is real. And I'm like, what the? You just
Sure.
fucking started from the point of view that you're
Yeah.
right. You can't prove anything after that.
Well, I would disagree, but then I would say, by what standard am I wrong? What logical fallacy or moral or ethical atrocity am I committing by using that line of thinking? And then by what standard are you saying that?
Well, I could just replace God with this flying spaghetti monster and ask you the same question.
Go ahead. Well, don't ask me the same question. Answer my question with the flying spaghetti monster as your epistemological basis, and then we can have a conversation.
All right, guys, I gotta.
But Josh,
Sure.
honestly,
Bye,
like,
Madison.
The flying spaghetti monster is the foundation of intelligibility and rational thought.
Okay.
the
How is
problem
he
is that
the
you said like what fallacy have I used, or show me the error in my reason. But there are other ways to be wrong than to have committed some kind of logical fallacy, right?
Yeah, the premises could be wrong. That's enough to make it wrong.
Dave, I
Your view could
apologize
be
so
valid
much,
and
but
sound.
Josh, bring up Jonathan to speak. You've got 3 more callers in line, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I'll get out.
All
Like
right. No, I'll
Yeah,
bring you up,
bring
bro.
I just wanted
bring
to bring
Jonathan
up
up here.
Kierkegaard in them.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you're reading them. Tristan, what's up, bro? What you got?
I have a gripe. I've got some damning logical conclusion, to prove to you that your God does not exist.
Sure, go for it.
But if you'd like to hear this, I want you to properly consider each logical step and tell me when I've made a misstep, and my premises are incorrect, or if
Mhm.
any conclusion to the syllogism is
Sure.
untrue.
Well, Tristan, I know you've been on the other shows before. Why don't you start with telling the people like a little bit about yourself and kind of what you believe, why you believe it, kind of your worldview, that type of stuff.
Well, I think pertinent to this, I do not believe the biblical God is true. And I think that I have a good education on the Bible. And while my worldview is really that I am constantly seeking, and I have yet to land on anything I would consider unfallible.
Okay.
And I think that all should be seeking. It's the about the journey. There is no destination.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So if you want to go into why God doesn't exist, and I can jump in if you want me to jump in, or you can just kind of finish your thought process and then we can discuss it. It's kind of up to you, man.
All right. So to begin, there are three tenets, three aspects of the Judeo-Christian deity, and these would be that he is omniscient, omnipotent, and benevolent. And despite this, evil exists, and this clearly contradicts his benevolence. And so some possible solutions to this conundrum are that, say, the devil exists, but this could not be the solution, for if he was omnipotent and omniscient, he would know what the devil was to do before he had created him, and would not have created him. And another solution I've heard is of saying that we need free will. That is something about his creation. He desired free will. Well, he could have, if he was omnipotent, created a man with free will that would not do evil. Or he could not have created free will if he was really benevolent. And another possible solution would be that well, actually, I seem to have forgotten, but
Okay. No worries.
so I think this makes it clear that these three properties cannot be assigned to the deity creator of humans because evil exists.
So kind of the premise is because evil exists, God cannot exist?
And because evil exists, a god with those three properties cannot exist.
So where do you find those properties being attributed to God?
Well, all throughout the Psalms, you can see God is all goodness.
Okay.
You can see
So
that
that's out of the
God knows
Bible.
all. Yes, I said with those three properties which are ascribed by the Bible. I said
Okay.
I spoke at the very beginning about the Judeo-Christian God that is.
Okay. Do you believe the Bible is true?
Clearly not. If all of these properties,
I'm just
the
trying to
Bible, if
understand.
the Bible is,
Then why are you making those claims against a God that is out of the Bible that you don't believe?
well, that is my grounds for not believing it.
I guess I would push back on that, man, and I would say your grounds for not believing in something is about a book that you don't believe in, written about a God you don't believe in, about properties that are manifested in the Psalms. So I don't see that as a valid, and I don't mean that offensively, as a valid foundation for not believing in God.
There was a time when I did believe in this, and through criticism, I what you think that I cannot analyze it without being partial towards it. That would be fallacious to only be partial towards something. Then how could you analyze it?
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of comes into question as to not how would you analyze something, but why analyze anything at all? why look at omniscience, omnipotence, and benevolence as qualities attributed to a God that you don't believe in from a Bible you don't believe in? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
And we
to
can
see
move on
whether
from a
or
different
not I
argument.
do believe in, do you see that do you not agree that the syllogism applies and it makes sense that there can be no God? Do
No,
not
I
ask
don't,
me
because
why I am doing these things. Do you think
Mhm.
I'm doing these things to decide whether or not these are applicable and whether they are true? And clearly they contradict themselves.
Yeah, but again, I guess I would ask, what is wrong with contradictions from your point of view and your worldview? Are contradictions wrong?
Um, the most successful form of human thought that has brought us out of the mud before any of us were able to speak through the air right now as we are doing. Magically, we were able to do this using rationality, logic. So yes, I think that if something is contradicting itself, then that is not conducive to good thought.
Great.
And that is
So,
called cognitive dissonance.
okay,
That is,
so what is, you mentioned success. What is success to you? What is the goal? We're talking about contradictions, right? I asked you kind of to justify your claim as to why contradictions are wrong, and you kind of said, well, it's not, we wouldn't be successful if we engaged in, essentially logical fallacies or contradiction, which I agree you can't be successful, but what's your view of success and why should we be successful? What's the drive to be successful?
implicit anatomy.
Can you explain that? 'Cause
You want to
I've never even heard
breed.
that.
You want to eat.
Oh, okay. Okay. You want to breed, eat, and procreate. Why?
Because of your implicit anatomy.
And where does that standard come from? Who told you about implicit anatomy?
Nobody told me this.
You just assume it.
Do you not have an anatomy?
Sure, but I would believe that the way I'm able to recognize why I have the desire to have sex with my wife, to have babies, and the desire to eat good food, and the desire to be in relationships with other people is because of God, right? The nature and character of God, what He's revealed to Himself, kind of saying the same stuff over again. I apologize, but that's how I know what I know. How do you know what you know in those few things?
I know nothing.
Do you know that?
Not even.
I'm sorry, I had to
Yeah,
laugh at that one.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be rude to you, Tristan. I'm just trying to kind of get to the foundations of what you believe here and why you believe it, because
That's
you're
a
making a
little
lot
bit
of claims.
condescending.
No, I'm not trying to be condescending, man. Even the statement that I know nothing, there's inherent knowledge in that. Like, you're making a knowledge claim that you believe is true, but you're denying it. So it's just not a good foundation for me as a Christian to start with. So yeah, I don't mean any offense to you at all, man. I don't know if maybe Thomas or Scott or Jason or Dave want to get in on that. But yeah, go ahead, guys.
Well, I'm asking you as the host, do you not see which you have avoided the syllogism I presented you with? These three properties are true by the Bible. Are they not?
Yeah. So yeah, I do believe that God is omnibenevolent, omniscient, and omnipresent. But I think we have different views of what those words mean, and also different ways of how that works out. And I think the reason that we have those different views is because of what you're starting with. You're pretty much starting with saying you don't really know how you know. And that is why I think you've been led to believe that because of these three properties being in the Bible, you say from the Psalms, that God can't exist. So I would just push back on that, and I wouldn't even get into the biblical view of benevolence and why evil exists
that
and
was
how
something
God is.
that was something you extricated after a lot after a lot of interrogation. I actually began. If you're going to say I started, I began as a Christian. I read the Bible, when I was a boy.
Which is great. I think you should keep reading it. Bible's awesome.
So what is your point? If I can see the if I can see the contradictions, the paradoxes, the logical fallacies, and you say that it's up to a matter of semantics, who are you to say that your semantics are superior to mine?
Yeah, I would say it's not an issue of semantics. I'd say it's an issue of foundation.
You said the definitions, our definitions of these words are incorrect, and you made an error. I was omniscient, omnipotent, and all benevolent, not omnipresence. I never spoke of.
Oh,
So I suppose that would be implied by omnipotence.
yeah. That's my apologies. I can't keep track of everything everybody says. Yeah, what I'm saying is, I don't think that because evil exists, that God can't exist, and that He's not the three things that you said. That's what I'm saying.
And why do you think that? The definitions are wrong.
Well, the definitions are not necessarily wrong. It's the way that you're interpreting them and how they apply to the God that you don't believe in, based on the Bible that you don't believe in. So what you're doing is you're taking
What is?
text.
I asked you why you don't believe it, or why you believe it. So your belief is based on my disbelief. That's
No, not at
kind
all.
of contrarian.
No, I'm definitely not a contrarian. What I
For
was
some strange sake of being contrarian. So why do you think that they're true? Why do you believe it, and base it not on my disbelief as you're trying to do?
No, I apologize if that's what you think is happening, that's not, right? I'm basing my belief on the Christian God, the triune God, how He's revealed Himself in creation and the Bible, not on your belief, because that would make you my God and you are not my God. I'm just trying to compare what you've said to my worldview, even though I haven't really heard anything from your worldview except you don't know anything. Which
I think is much more wise than thinking you have some path and direct connection to supreme knowledge. That is assuming quite a lot.
Sure.
Whereas I have assumed much less.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing to assume less or more?
Have you never heard the colloquialism that to assume is to make an ass out of you and me?
Is making an ass out of you and me bad or good?
I think you can tell. You don't need to ask.
Well, I can tell because I start with the Christian God. You've said you know nothing, but are still making claims. I'm just asking you how you know what you know after everything you say. And then you're telling me, I think I know why.
You still haven't told me why you think that why you think that these properties do not conflict with the fact that there is evil.
Well, sure. Well, the short story is because God says, right? God is good and is a standard of good, right? And
so
what
God does not conflict logically because God says so. That is circular as it gets.
Is circular reasoning absolutely fallacious? And if so, how?
I am God.
Great.
Do you agree with that?
Well, I would say that God knows things, and you've already given up knowledge and said you don't know anything at all. So yeah, I would say you've already disproven yourself. Whereas
well,
the God
I've
of the Bible,
I've changed my mind.
Well, the
I'm
Bible
actually
says God
God
doesn't change. So yeah, you wouldn't be God.
Okay, so your source that I'm not God is somebody else who says that he is God?
That's
Do
proven.
you see the problem with circular reasoning now?
No, not at all, because you weren't able to maintain a consistent position. So you've already given up knowledge. You've already started with the book that you don't believe in.
Please entertain the hypothetical. I've changed my mind completely. I've decided that I am God incarnate.
And I just told
Josh, I mean,
I just want to point out. I say that I'm God.
Hey Tristan, let's let Scott get in here real quick.
I mean, I was just going to ask, Josh, what's your opinion on the differentiation between the Old Testament and the New Testament? I could have swore
Mm-hmm.
when I went to church growing up, it was that a new covenant was made with human beings. So God indeed did change his mind.
Josh, before you answer that, we do have a lot of callers.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
not saying
you're right.
to let Tristan go, but do as you. This is your room.
Sorry, it's my first time. Tristan, I've wrote down a bunch of stuff that you said. I want to get back to it. I think we can have a pretty good dialogue, especially with you, changing your mind and claiming to be God. I think it's a great thought experiment.
So before
let
I leave, can I
Yeah.
conclude that you think that circular reasoning is founded, the foundation of truth?
No, not at all. I think I was very clear that God is the foundation of truth.
But your God, as you just admitted, can only be proven through circular reasoning.
I don't think that's what I said, and if I did, I apologize. Yeah, I don't think that's the case at all. I think God is proven
When you
through
say
many
that
things, such as creation.
your God,
Okay.
your God, you say that your God is
Mm-hmm.
true, and you quote the Bible. That's circular
Mm-hmm.
reasoning. I asked you about this, and you said, "What's the problem with circular reasoning?" That has a serious implication that there's nothing wrong with circular reasoning.
Well, I would say that a lot of what we're doing is circular reasoning. I would just make the claim, what's wrong with that, right? Because you have to start somewhere. I think that if you start
So
with your,
we're
if you
all
start
we're
with your
all
reason,
employing circular reasoning. Can you say what reasoning before I said that I was God was circular? No,
sure, you said
it
you
wasn't. I
couldn't.
had
Okay.
what? Okay, please tell me what before I said I was God, because that was my example of circular reasoning.
Yeah, so essentially what you were saying is you denied knowledge. I think the way that you're able to reason right now is through your own reasoning, and so what you're doing is you're giving a reason as to why your reason is good. All of the claims you're making are coming probably from a rationalist or empiricist position. I would ask you to justify those claims, and how are those claims not circular? Because they are, but they're viciously circular because they can't account for themselves or answer themselves. They can't answer the questions that you're giving, and you're actually giving out claims such as "I don't know anything at all," which in itself a knowledge claim. So it just kind of falls apart. I'm not sure if I'm not explaining that right or what. But yeah, man, yeah.
You're
I'll
just
give you 10. I'll give you 10 seconds, and then we're gonna bring Kevin on. But yeah, what you got?
I just think you're gish galloping, trying to describe me. When I say that I know nothing,
But you did say that, right?
when I say that I know nothing, how can you say that I know that I know nothing when I say that I know nothing?
Well, I would disagree with you. I'd say that you do know things. I wouldn't agree with your position in the first place. I'm just going off of what you said.
May God have mercy on your soul.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. For real.
All right, let's go.
All right, Tristan. Take it easy, Tristan.
Here we go.
All right,
Sorry, you
Kevin.
guys have been waiting so long. Yeah,
Sorry,
Kevin.
man.
It's all
that's
good.
my bad.
It's all good. We've had conversations in the past.
Oh, Kevin.
So,
Yeah, what's up, man?
Yeah. How you doing?
Great.
So there's been a lot of topics that have come up tonight, and each one would be so interesting just to have a session on the whole
Absolutely.
night, just on one of those topics, right? Like the foundation of knowledge alone would be a really interesting one, or like the problem of evil would be a really interesting one, and
we will have shows on knowledge on my show, just to plug
That's
a little
you,
bit.
Thomas.
Just a plug.
Thank you. I'll plug just a moment here.
So I guess there's sort of two things that I kind of want to talk to you about. One, you asked if you had said anything fallacious or done anything fallacious, and you touched on this with Tristan a bit around circular reasoning. I'd love to talk to you a bit about that. And then the other thing that you had mentioned, oh man, it's leaving my mind. Oh, you asked Tristan also, like, why are you using a book you don't believe in, a talking about properties of a God you don't believe in to tell me that this God doesn't exist.
Mhm.
And that is really just like an internal consistency test, which is just to say, by your standards, this would not be true. In the same way that, like, you would go to a mathematician and say, by the rules that you use as a mathematician, this is not correct. So whichever one you want to talk about first, I'd be happy to talk.
Jason, Dave, do you have anything real quick you want to add, or?
Well, I guess I could give this advice to everyone, and we've covered this on my show, and we'll probably cover it again because that's why it's called Torture Time. But,
Heck yeah.
but logical fallacies, all of them, all 150 something of them that I've tried to beat into my brain, all of them do not necessarily mean the claim is false. It just means that you cannot be reasonably assured that they are true. So there's no way to prove them true if you use logically fallacious reasoning. Circular reasoning is a logical fallacy. It's a fallacy of similar to begging the question, using using the conclusion as the next premise. So yes, circular reasoning is fallacious, but you could still be right by luck or by whatever means.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, fallacies don't mean false. They just mean you cannot be reasonably certain about their truth, value, or claim.
That's a really good point. Just showing someone that their argument contains a fallacy does not then prove that God doesn't exist. I think that's
Correct.
a really important point. Yeah.
Correct.
Just since Josh invited comment, I think that just listening in, this continues, and I'm guessing it'll go this way again. This continues to get down to the point of starting point or foundation, whether it goes to reasoning or whether it goes to evil. You know, this problem of, well, where are you starting? How do you justify your epistemology or reason or so on, continues to crop up. And I think it will again, which is why I led in the beginning with this question, which is, you know, my position is something like there's a necessarily existing multiverse with mathematical properties. And I just don't know what, because Josh, you seem to think there's something special about starting with the belief in a God and why that starting point can do things that others can't. And you've said like, oh, I don't think that sounds like a good starting point, or something else doesn't sound like a good starting point. And I still don't know what you're looking for in a starting point, or why God is a good starting point. And I think you're just gonna go that way with Kevin again. So I don't know. I guess I'll let you guys talk about it because I've spoken enough. But if I think
it's a good point.
Necessarily existing multiverse, like that's my position. Let's say it's one that I'm entertaining. There's a necessarily existing multiverse that has mathematical
I entertain
properties.
many different types of multiverses, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I mean, do you have anything to sell me? Because if I already believe in that, I can derive reason and physics, and from physics, chemistry, and from chemistry, biology, and evolution, and so on. And I just don't know what. I'm happy to entertain the theistic one as well, but it just seems like they're two different solutions that give me the same answers. And if that's the case, like I just don't have any way to pick between those two. And I haven't heard anything yet that moves the needle one way or the other.
Kevin, you still with us?
Oh yeah, I thought that was addressed to Josh.
No, it's all good. Dave was just making good points. We wanted to hear from everybody.
Comment was invited.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I mean, I have thoughts about necessity. I think if we're going to invoke necessity, then we can have really strong arguments for God. In fact, some of the best rely on necessary beings, for example. So you would have, I think, an intellectually honest position would be to look at a necessary being argument for God versus a necessary mathematical universe for God, and then just a necessary mathematical universe that's probably more naturalist, I guess, and decide between those two theories which one is better. And then we would be using some other principles or standards there. Probably something like parsimony or explanatory power.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But the only point that I was trying to make is that whichever is true, whether there's a necessarily existing mathematical universe or a necessarily existing conscious Christian God or any other type of God, whatever's going on at the root of it all, that's the thing that accounts for our reasoning and our epistemology and our metaphysics. It's that thing. And I just don't know how to pick between the two. And although I can say it's one or I can say it's the other. Josh thinks it's the mind one. But it sounds like he's also saying that that's the only thing it could be. And it seems like I can make up all kinds of things that it could be. And I have difficulty with this argument because I just don't know. I don't know what it's offering me as opposed to my universe theory or anything else I could come up with, really.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to steelman Josh's position, I at least most Christians I talk to are going to appeal to something like, well, there are all these things that we observe in the universe. One of them is sort of like the intelligibility of the universe. The other one are these things that we have moral intuitions. We even observe this in animals. The kind of like rarity of our life on the planet, what they might call the fine tuning. When you take the totality of those things together, then the hypothesis of God has really strong explanatory power for all of those things. And because of that, it's the one that makes the most sense to believe in. The mathematical model of a multiverse doesn't explain the moral intuitions. It might explain the fine-tuning because you could say that, out of all the infinite numbers of multiverses out there, we happen to be in the one with the fine-tuning. There's an infinite number of those where it isn't fine-tuned for life, etc. But it doesn't explain the intelligibility of things, the continuity of rationality in the universe that we observe.
Well, I would say that it does, and I would just give a different account. But
how would it do that?
Well, which one? The moral intuitions? I think, for example, I think moral intuitions. I think it's a perfectly sensible theory to say that moral intuitions are conditional on are natural only. They're a byproduct of the evolution of a social species, and it is to our great benefit to live in communities, and we've adapted traits that allow us to live in communities. That could be what's going on. Like if I were already committed to objective morality, then I agree. I'd lean more towards the theist explanation. But I'm not committed to objective morality. I think what I just explained is just as plausible.
I think what you explained is a descriptive account of why we have the intuitions, but that is not to explain saying those intuitions are true, and we think they're true. So when we're talking about morality, we're talking about an action guiding principle telling us what we ought to do. It's normative in the philosophical language. So the mathematical universe doesn't explain that part of it. So
but I just rejected that. I reject that there is any normative. What I gave was a descriptive account of why we have literally the intuition, the moral feeling, what I call an affinity aversion complex towards certain families of behaviors. I don't like that. That's bad, gross. Yes, I like that.
Okay, so that would mean you're a moral non-realist, which is fine.
Yes, yeah.
But a lot of people are not moral non-realists. In fact, more people are moral realists. So for the moral
I would have to see some papers on that.
There is actually. It's experimental.
Yeah, I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying the difference between moral realism and anti-realism and naturalism and ethical non-naturalism. I would say most people probably wouldn't even know where they stand on that, because realism is basically stating absolutely that you can find morality with mathematics or physics or science.
No, it's just saying moral realism is.
And real quick, Kevin, if you guys have
true.
If you guys have papers or book recommendations, post them in the chat, man. People want to know this stuff. So, yeah, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No problem. I mean, I would if I had my computer, because I have it bookmarked and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I think he's right about that it is a very popular, I think, majority position to be an objective moral realist. But now we're doing a more traditional case-building approach towards trying to say, here are all the things about the world that we think are probably true. They work better on a theistic account of the world than on a non-theistic or a mathematical universe
Mhm.
account for the world.
Mhm.
And I'm down with that. I think that's a reasonable way to go about talking about metaphysics. But that's not the presuppositional argument. That's the
Right.
traditional
Yeah.
case-building evidentially argument. And what I'm
Yes.
saying, or the reason that I made this point is because when it gets down to this presuppositional argument where Josh likes to go to the, well, what's your starting point? You know, why do you think circular reasoning is bad, et cetera, et cetera? What's the ultimate foundation for knowledge? That is accounted for by any of the candidates that could be explaining all of this phenomenology. That argument doesn't push me any which way. Now, the arguments you brought up, like fine-tuning, that might push me a particular way. Moral realism. I have some moral intuitions. That's going to push me one way or the other. But it's not a logical. You know, the presuppositional argument says nothing else could possibly explain our reasoning except the existence of a God.
Yeah.
Just,
yeah.
I can make up anything that does
I'm
that.
I'm totally with you, Dave. I am an atheist. And I have the same, I agree with what you're saying. I think one route that, are you familiar with Chomsky's universal grammar argument?
It rings a bell, but not really.
Well, basically, he's saying like, well, humans come preloaded with these like a language learning ability, and instead of like language having to be taught and we sort of learn the skills slowly, Chomsky's like, we're born with a preset of skills here, and the reason why he thinks that is what he calls the poverty of the stimulus, and that's because like children can make novel sentences before they've heard sentences like that uttered. That was one of his arguments. And I've heard Josh say in this hosted room that like it's the impossibility of the contrary, right? Which to me sounds a bit like the poverty of the stimulus. So, and Josh, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you're saying naturalism is false then. Naturalism has to be false.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah.
But why I liked that though. I liked that argument. That was interesting and thought provoking. But isn't that also just another? I mean, correct me if my misunderstanding of this. Isn't that another abductive case building thing? It seems like we have a particular amenability towards language. One thing that would explain that is if, I don't know, we're souls and we've heard these words before. You could explain that a number of ways. It could be Christianity or reincarnation or something weird though. It would be something weird. And I like that argument. It seems, but again, it's not a logically necessary impossibility of the contrary. I mean, you could frame it that way, but a much stronger version of that argument is just to say, here's a good explanation for that. It works better than if you take the naturalist approach where it's all from birth material, etc., or something like that. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, my big problem with Christianity, and this has been my problem since I was a Christian, I could never reconcile these differences when I read the Bible over and over again, and I went to church, and I was talking about trying to go to seminary to study the Bible more deeply. I could not reconcile aspects about God that were contradictory with each other. And this is the problem of evil that was brought up earlier. That doesn't get me to no gods exist, but I think it does get me to the Christian God doesn't exist.
I think it's really interesting because when I think about it, what it gets me to is the most plausible version of theism to me is a version where we've all agreed to be here voluntarily, and our experience here is something that we've opted into. It's a pre-design where we are agreeing to partake in this process of having an experience here, and maybe philosophical zombies come into play. Some people that appear to be suffering the worst of all, the people that are suffering most pointlessly, they're actually philosophical zombies, and they're just there to teach us a lesson about the depravity, the depth that depravity can go to, or something like that. If you put all those variables in, then it starts to look more plausible again. I don't know.
Right, but then this brings up a common atheist argument against theism, which is that would not be congruent with what we take to be fact about the world. Like philosophical zombies based on our best evidence, wouldn't exist. And then this is where Josh would say, okay, how do you know that evidence?
And why does it
I mean,
matter?
Why does it matter? Yeah.
I mean, maybe they do. I mean, this is one of those things where everything I experience would actually be the same either way. This is the problem I have with the moral argument as well. I kind of think that all of my feelings, all of the phenomenology of morality, would be exactly the same if there were objective morality as it would be if it was Darwinistic. And I kind of think that about philosophical zombies too. I think everything I experience about the world is the same on both of these hypotheses. And once I recognize that, it kind of I wonder if there's really any way I can go with it.
Are you familiar with Wittgenstein? Ludwig Wittgenstein?
Yeah.
You sound very much like a Wittgensteinian to me, because he says the same thing about morality, and he says the same thing about God. Like, for Wittgenstein, the sentence "God exists," that sentence doesn't refer to anything that you can observe or measure, and he would say that sentence is nonsense. Because it's not picking out anything literal in the world. Now, the Christian would say, no, Wittgenstein's wrong, because we can point to things that do show evidence of God, like miracles. I have this internal experience, this divine experience where I can feel God's presence in my life. I can see God working in my life.
Yeah.
So they would count that as evidence where we wouldn't.
I think I like I think I am Wittgensteinian about morality, certainly, because I don't think there's anything I would look at and think to myself that's inexplicable in terms of Darwinistic complex social species. Now, I do think there are things that you can point out about the world that lend themselves nicely to a theistic model, like the fine-tuning. I like that argument. Yeah. It's really interesting to me. I don't think that lends itself as nicely to some naturalist models. Yeah, as it does to a theistic model. So
Dave, Kevin, let's Kevin, I'm going to bring you up to speakers. We're going to bring Perry on. Interesting conversation. We're talking about philosophical zombies, moral non-realism, fine-tuning. What's wrong with Christianity? What's the problem? So, Kevin, come on up to speakers, and Perry, let's get you on here. What's up, brother?
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Doing good, man. Okay? Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
How you doing?
Good. I mean, there's a few things I guess I'd want to bring up. First of all, I hate stopping that extremely intellectually beneficial conversation that you guys were just having, but
they'll be here all night, right, guys? Just kidding.
The concept of, or I guess definition of faith that I think it was Jason maybe, or Dave that was talking about it with Thomas. There's two definitions of faith, which is an important caveat to bring up. There's the religious one, believing in God regardless of whatever evidence there may be. And then there's the secular one, which pretty much just means confidence. And I guess I would ask if you guys agree with that premise that there's two definitions of faith. So, I mean, Thomas, I don't know if... I forget.
From the 800,000 different... from the 800,000 different people I've talked to that believe in Christianity, they all have a different idea of faith.
Right. I mean, I'm sure they have different interpretations of many important things in Christianity, but...
Yeah, but I agree with you that the secular usage means confidence.
Yeah, so I mean, people try and rag me and say, oh, you have faith in science. And, well, yeah, I do have...
You should have faith in
pretty good
science.
Confidence. Yeah.
You need to not trust the people that are doing science as much, but science as a method is good.
Well... we'll see the results and then perhaps we can judge that. But I mean, if we see repeatable results, I don't think it really matters politically who's doing the experiment. Hence the confidence part, being able to repeat it and it's falsifiable, etc.
Yeah.
What else did I want to bring up? I hate, I guess, repeating what Tristan said about.
Because you don't like Tristan? That's not cool, Perry.
I hate him.
I'm just kidding,
He's
bro.
Such a terrible guy, right? Atheist these days, right?
Heyo.
I'm kidding. I'm atheist. Omniscience, omnipotence, and benevolent, yeah.
Benevolence, yeah.
And omnipresent.
And everywhere, yeah.
Yep.
When you're taking a shit, he's there watching you. So, if did he create sin? Is, I guess, one thread that I can pull. Thomas, do you believe that he created sin, or do you believe that he created Satan, who created sin, or whatever?
Are you trying to ask Josh or me?
Or, I'm sorry, did I say Thomas? Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
but I mean, preferably Josh.
No, I don't think that God created sin. I also
Right.
wouldn't have a problem.
Hold on. Just rapid fire, kind of thing.
Oh, sure, go for it.
So how did it get here then? Evil. You're gonna say something like free will, I'm assuming.
I mean, I don't really believe in a free will. I think, as it's commonly used, I would believe in what's called a compatibilistic free will, and that you only have two natures according to the Bible. You're a slave to sin, or you're a slave to Christ. You're an Adam, or you're in Christ. I believe that sin made its way into the world via Satan, who was an angel who essentially was not in line with God's will and was already a slave to sin, and that is why he fell. Right? He became proud. Yep.
So, but God created Satan, though, right? Or the angel that turned into Satan, however you want to put it.
Yeah, Lucifer to Satan. Yeah.
And now let's attach this idea of omniscient, all-knowing.
Mm-hmm.
He knows the outcome of every choice that you're going to make before you make it, before you were born, before your grandma was born.
Sure.
And so I guess same goes with Satan. So he created Satan knowing that this was going to happen and that evil would further prevail in the world. Would you accept that premise?
Yeah, I believe that everything happens because God either decreed it or allowed it. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's in Jeremiah.
I mean, and
he declares the beginning from the end.
And omnibenevolent means all loving, and loving is a subjective term, but I guess you would look in the Bible for like the requirements of thing would be.
Sure, I would start with God's own character and nature and being, right? God is love. We can
Would you consider that loving, that he created Satan, knowing that Satan would inflict a bunch of sin upon people, and those people would further, burn in hell for eternity because of that?
Yeah. So, well, loving according to the biblical definition, yes. Loving according to what you kind of said was maybe a more subjective view, maybe not. I don't know. I'd have to get kind of your
loving
your take
is just is a subjective view no matter what. But yeah.
Well, that's a truth claim and a knowledge claim, with which I think you'd probably have to back up as to why you can use a subjective claim to override my objective
Gotcha.
claim.
So that reminds me actually what I wanted to say before I said this.
Yeah, go for it.
Tristan said, he doesn't know shit or whatever, and I would also agree that I don't know shit, and I have been as if flaunting this to my friends and family, and I'm sure they've, thought that I'm a schizo or something at this point because I've been sounding crazy saying this stuff, but nobody is omniscient. You said earlier that...
So can I help you out a little bit real quick?
Yeah, please. Please do.
Okay. So this is the argumentation for the God of classical theism, the four omnis. I'm sure Josh is quite aware of what I'm going to say. There's many different arguments for these things, and there's many ways that newer apologists have fixed these things, supposedly. But let's just go with the God of classical theism. Omnipotence, right? Yep. Can God make a rock so big he can't lift it? Anybody, it doesn't matter.
Say that again.
Can God make a rock so big that he cannot lift it?
I would say that he can't lift it. God damn, you and your logical fallacies.
All right,
So
let's
the
go on to
issue
let's
is
go
that-
on to the
Yeah, go
next
for
one.
it.
Let's go on.
Yeah,
Let's
go
go
to
on
the
to the
next
next one. Omniscience. Okay.
Yeah.
So if he's omniscient, that means he knows all future. It's predestination.
He knows infinite,
So
all the infinite. If there is an infinite amount of things to know, he knows it.
okay, so he knows infinite many things, right? He knows everything that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Then he has no free will.
Correct. That is
So
one of the threads that
yeah.
I would conclude to. Yeah.
So the other one is the other two is omnipresence. That's just basically saying he's the universe. So you could just X out the omnipresence part.
Mhm.
The other thing would be, or he's the omniverse or multiverse or whatever. The other one is omnibenevolence. Well, of course, the problem of evil comes into that. How can you have an all-powerful God but an all-loving God simultaneously? Somebody could say, well, why didn't he just create us all in heaven? I've heard that one before. So there are many
Right.
answers and questions to this, but most of the time when people and Christian apologists argue now, I know it's not all of them, Josh, and you can correct me, but I've
Yeah,
heard a few of them like Matt Slick and Mike
Oh,
Lacona
man.
and certain people like that
Yeah.
argue from it's maximally powerful being, not omnipowerful. So it's all power within logic, all power within logical possibility.
That's quite an important caveat that is not
Yeah.
in the traditional definition of omni,
Mhm.
which is all.
Yeah.
I
I'm just
mean,
telling you what they've done with it. So they've made it all maximally instead of omni.
conveniently to say. Okay, so let's take this free will piece then. So these, I mean, I'd love to hear what Josh says about it. Josh, okay, well, you said the compatible free will. I mean, go ahead and I guess say that again for me. You said that there was like two branches, one being evil and one being good, or am I botching that?
No, I think what I would say is that the Bible describes what's called a compatibilistic free will, meaning our wills are aligned with God or they're not aligned with God.
Or they're
I think
not.
it's in Romans 5 or Romans 8, I can't remember, but I'll look it up. You're either a slave to Christ or a slave to sin, and I don't mean slave in the chattel slavery, abusive slave type of thing. I just mean, hey, this is my God, and I'm going to do what he says, or try to.
So how do we
So
get
that-
put into each category?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would believe in what's called election or predestination, kind of like it says in Romans 8:28 through 32, and Ephesians 2, that you're predestined to either be a believer or a
That's what I
non-believer.
was referencing a moment ago, those verses.
Awesome.
So if you were
Man, you're
gonna
so cool.
if you were gonna go to hell for sinning, that I mean, he made you that way. He category already. I
Well-
mean, that was just gonna happen. I mean, Muslims, each Muslim, assuming that they don't accept Jesus Christ to be the Messiah, are going to burn in hell, and God put them into that slaves of sin.
Sure. I like I kind of said before, God either decrees everything or allows everything, right? So God
What does
allows
decree
you,
mean?
like he declared it, like he
Declare.
like,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like he said it, so it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like, non-believers, much like yourselves, like I don't want you to go to hell. Like I think that's why,
Thanks.
like why we're on this, doing this. Like I'm not here to like try to sound super smart. That's actually pretty impossible for me because I'm kind of dumb. Got that GED. No offense to people that have GEDs though. Sorry, that was messed up. I think that you
That
fall
all
into
you
that category.
GEDers out there, Josh, I'm just
Ayo.
kidding.
I gotta go, guys. See you later. Yeah. So what I would say is, it's Christians' obligation, really, and command, based on Matthew 28, the Great Commission, as well as verses like 1 Peter 3:15, to tell non-believers, pretty much the gospel, but also
Well,
to kind
1
of
Peter
defend the
3:15
faith.
says, give the reason why you believe, right?
Well, actually, it says sanctify Christ in your heart as Lord. That's kind of a common
Yeah, that's one
misunderstanding.
interpretation. Yes.
Well, that's what it says. Yeah, set Christ
Yeah,
apart in your heart as holy, sanctify Christ in your heart as Lord. That's missed by a lot of apologists because it just comes down to like, I want to sound smarter than everybody, and that's not
Okay.
what.
All right.
That's
I'll
not
go
what
with your
first-
reading then.
Yeah, that's not what Peter's saying. Peter is saying set Christ apart in your heart as Lord, honor him as holy, right? If Jesus is your Lord, you'll do what he says. And what's the end of the verse? But do so with gentleness and respect. So yes, give a reasoned defense, for the hope that is within you to anybody that asks of you.
Yes,
But
give a
don't
reason
be a
for the hope
jerk
that is
about
within you.
it.
That's what I was thinking.
You know
So
what I mean?
I hear all of this, but
Yeah,
what,
sorry, that was a long-winded explanation. Which
what
I don't think
I'm
I
not, I don't feel as though we're reconciling our ideas very well, because
Sure.
I have this idea, and so says you, that it's predestined. I mean, I think that it's determined for a different, it has nothing to do with God, but regardless, I'll take your premise that there is a God and he did predestine this. He knew right when he made, I mean, I'm so bad at, the Bible, but when he made Adam
go
and
for it.
Eve, or whoever it was,
Yep.
he knew that a guy named Perry would come out and, assuming that I don't turn Christian in the next 40 years, I'm going to die not being a believer. And he knew that that was going to happen. And so now, my skin's, I'm going to burn for infinity. And I just don't, I still don't understand. I mean, we could talk about loving. Obviously, I don't think that's loving at all, but rather, I think it'd be more beneficial. I don't see your definition of compatible free will reconciling this fact. I don't feel as though, I mean, are you saying that there's limited free, I mean, I just don't think that there's any free will. He knows every choice we're going to make. He knows the outcome of every choice that we're ever going to make before we even think about making it.
Yeah, I don't think that means you don't have free choice, though. I don't think the Bible states that God is kind of like pulling our strings and, deciding every single choice for. I think that God can enter into his creation. I'm not a cessationist. I think he can do miraculous things and, change people's hearts and minds if he wants to.
Then he's
but yeah,
partial potent to, not omnipotence, but he's partially powerful. If he doesn't control, if I have some sort of choice independent of God who supposedly created me, how, I mean, how is he not pulling the strings? I still need to find where my choice lay independent of him.
Sure. I guess what I would say is, I mean, the Bible's clear that God is not telling me, like I've got my hands over my head right now for some reason, like God did not choose that for me. Now, I believe that he knew that I would do that, but I
He
don't
created
think that
you knowing
affects-
that you were going to do that, and he could have programmed you to have your hands at your side right now if he wanted to, because he's all powerful, but he didn't.
Yeah. What would be what's the problem with him doing that or not doing that?
Because so what's the problem with him puppeting is what you're asking.
Well, sure. I still don't think it's him. I don't think it's him puppeting. In either way.
All right. Well, let's step back then. So the hands above your head right now is your choice, independent of God. Did God know that? Okay.
I don't think it's independent of God, because, like I said, I'm a presuppositionalist.
So it's
and I believe
dependent
that all
of
things
him.
start with God, right?
It was dependent of him. He caused that.
I don't know if he caused it or allowed it. Like I said, he decrees things and he allows things, right? And so I would say, from a presuppositional standpoint, epistemologically, I wouldn't know that I had my hands. Now my hands are crossed and I'm tapping my leg, but
And he knew you
I
were gonna
wouldn't
do that?
know that. I mean, maybe, but I wouldn't see the problem with him knowing or not knowing a small
Well,
decision.
the
like
problem
that.
is with the claims that are attached to him, which is omniscient, all-knowing. If you're now saying maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't, it's not very clear to me that you think he's all-knowing. If you're confident that he's all-knowing, knows all that, if there's a quadrillion things to be known, he knows all quadrillion of them. If there's if there's infinity, he knows all of that infinity. If that, I mean, that's a logical fallacy, I'm sure, but
Yeah,
if he knows it all already. He knew it.
He done had that. Yeah, and I would say he does. I guess I misspoke. I wouldn't say that he didn't know something, but I would also say, with as powerful and almighty as God is, I'm not sure that he would necessarily concern himself with me putting my hand on my mouse.
Fair enough. Then
Right?
he's not all powerful. Then I'm just going to, sidestep over to this all powerfulness. He's only kind of powerful then if you have some kind of control of your arms right now, independent of your creator,
Yeah,
then
and again,
he's not all power. He's kind of powerful.
and again, I would say there is a physical power in that God is allowing me to do these things that would be kind of more of a free choice based on my nature. I would also say there's an intellectual power in that I don't think that any of us can even have this conversation without starting with God. So I wouldn't see God as less powerful because he's choosing to not direct my hand, with, I don't know, some kind of demi-more ghost experience. I would say it makes him more powerful. And then I would say,
More ghost experience.
I mean,
I
that's
hear
the
you, Josh.
pot thing, right? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Hey,
I've never
I
seen
hate to
ghosts.
interrupt.
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
to interrupt Perry because I love Perry to death. He's one of my favorite people to talk to, and you can bring him up to speakers
Ditto.
because he's very well mannered, like the rest of them up there.
Bring them up.
We've got 3 callers in line. Is the only reason
Yeah,
I
let's do
interrupt
it.
this,
Let's
guys.
hear him. Let's hear it
Okay,
from them.
Go up,
come on
Perry.
up to speakers, Perry.
There it is. Okay.
Did you get it?
Yep.
Tristan's back.
Here we go.
Tristan, what up, dude?
Hey, yeah, I was gonna say Amy's been waiting for a while, but
I don't even see her on here.
do you not see Amy on there? Maybe it's my phone messing up. Go ahead.
I see Christian, and Tristan
Okay.
left.
Okay,
All right,
Amy must have left too.
I'll take Christian and Tristan. Dial back in, man. Christian, are you there, brother?
Hello, Christian.
Hello. Anybody? Christian left.
All right, so Tristan back on.
All right.
Tristan, not Kristen. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm take the next caller. All right, Tristan's back. What's up, dude?
Round 2.
Hello.
Right. Hey, what's up?
Callin was having some technical issues. So I'm gonna leave. I just want to ask you. Well, exactly what Barry was talking about. We're just gonna keep pressing you because it makes no sense to either of us. Clearly.
What is sense, and why do we need it?
Well, you don't need to get rhetorical.
Josh.
I mean, it's an honest question. It's an honest question.
What? So you're gonna ask me some purely semantic question.
I mean, you keep
Before
saying
we
semantics.
can-
We need to define our key terms here, though. Why do you believe what you believe? How do you know what you know? How do you differentiate between right and wrong? I mean, you've already given up knowledge as far as I'm concerned, so that's kind of my baseline for you, unless you want to change what you're thinking. And you can, say you're God again as well, but we all really know you don't believe that. So if you want to have an intellectually honest conversation, I'm totally into it. Start with what you actually
I
believe and why
have
you
been
believe it.
intellectually honest. And what I say when I say I know nothing, if I can offer
Okay.
some alternative explanation, there is no algorithm for truth. There is no set of steps that you
Is
can
that
take
true?
that will give you the ultimate truth.
Is ultimate truth the answer? Is that our goal, ultimate truth?
If you are comfortable believing a lie, then I might as well not even try to press the point.
Are lies bad?
They're not useful.
Okay, what about in Nazi Germany when the SS are going door to door and they're knocking on families' doors and they walk in there and a family is hiding a Jewish family under the floorboards and the guy says, "Hey, do you have Jews under your floorboards? Do you
It's few
lie
and
and
far
is that
between.
useful?"
I would not use any harmful deceit.
Okay, so lies can be good and they could be useful.
If you would shelter yourself from the truth to live in a world of fantasy, then that may be useful to you, but that is not the world that I wish to live in.
Well, what about the Nazi Germany example I just gave you? There's lots of documented stories on that very specific thing. Some of them end up great with, people being free and not
In
not
that
murdered.
example, as funny as it would sound, You are the Jew depending on the lie, and I'm the SS officer seeking the truth.
I mean, that's that's, I think it's kind of a dangerous thing to say, man. I'm not sure you want to go to where you're justifying Nazi Germany and where you're siding with them. Maybe you
I'm
do.
justifying them. That's the mapping of the analogy.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to come in here, Thomas. I don't necessarily agree with what you just said, but
Can you not see that there's a difference between lying for some utilitarian consideration or seeking the true nature of the universe?
The Nazis weren't just seeking the true nature of the universe; they were seeking out people of a specific race so they could exterminate them. Those are pretty different.
Yeah, they are, and that's why his analogy is faulty.
I mean, I think it was
His
pretty clear.
Point wasn't. Yeah, I think Josh's point is to just talk about the usefulness of lies. Like when he asked you why is it wrong to lie, you said it's not useful, and Josh just pointed out a useful case where it's a lie. So then obviously, it not being useful isn't going to be a good argument for why it's bad to lie. So we need another argument for why it's bad to lie. That's all it was saying.
It's not useful.
But we have an example where it is useful. In fact, there are many other examples.
It's only useful to one party.
Okay,
yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry, no, you can go ahead, Josh.
No, I was going to say
from a neutral standpoint that both parties, that there is no elevation of either party, and one lies to the other. Mm-hmm. It is only useful to one party, and it is deleterious to the goals of the other party.
Sure, that's if you can separate usefulness
that's
one from
epistemology,
which I think you're doing, but you can't separate usefulness from morality, right? Especially in this case. Maybe there's some other cases you can, but in one case, one person is seeking to murder in terms of genocide and kidnapping.
You fundamentally don't want the truth. You would be comfortable with a lie if it was useful to you particularly.
Well,
not to anybody else, but just for your own protection, as this analogy goes, that you don't think there's anything wrong with lies.
Oh, I didn't say there's nothing wrong with lies at all. What I asked was, can lies be good? You said they're not useful. And I've given you an example of when a lie is useful for the saving of a life, because I respect.
But they're not useful towards the aims of the truth.
Sure. What do you mean the truth? You're talking about the truth as if a Jewish family is underneath the floorboards?
The opposite of a lie.
I don't think that a lie is just the opposite of the truth. I mean, I think oftentimes people who lie actually know the truth. I mean, that's why they're lying, because they're giving a false report relative to the truth. I would say someone who's just wrong about some information isn't lying. So if you're trying to say that like being a presuppositionalist is being a liar, I don't think that's right.
It is, though. You say you know something when you don't. That's a lie.
Josh.
Yeah.
Josh gives reasons for why he knows that, and those aren't deceptive. Like, it's totally out in the open for everyone to criticize, and Josh is like taking it on the chin tonight, you know?
Hey-o.
Yeah, props, honestly.
No, yeah, dude, I love this stuff, man. And it helps me, honestly, it helps me be a better Christian, because then you force me to stand on what I'm saying I believe in. Well, what if I haven't even read the Bible? You know, well, I'm look like an idiot, you know? That's been great. But Tristan, did you want to move on from kind of the lie thing, or do you want to kind of stick with that? We got Christian on the line too here in a minute, so we'll probably bump you off here in a minute, bud.
Why would you think that? You ask me, I tell you it's untrue, mm-hmm. right? That there's no formula for truth, mm-hmm. and you ask me, is it that when you ask if it's what if it's good to lie, if it's bad to lie? Why do you ask?
Yeah,
Why don't you just tell me that there is a formula for truth, and you think that it's divinely inspired to you from God?
because I think we already know what I believe because I've already clearly stated it. And I think when you make a statement like there is no formula for truth, well, do you believe that? Is that true? Is that an actual truth claim? Because it kind of refutes itself. If there's no formula for truth, how can that be true? So it doesn't really make any sense. And why am I asking about lies? Because I think
What is
that
sense?
what is sense? Like awareness, like common sense, understanding the reality around you and being able to use that in your everyday
You ask
life.
questions like this. What is sense?
Yeah, I
And
just
then when
answered
I
it.
ask you, you ask more questions. What kind of sense?
No,
You don't have any answers. Your truth is not any better than admitting that you have no truth. Because
sure. I
all you
mean,
can do is ask questions.
oh,
You
I don't
or
think
I.
that's true. Even though you've given up truth and given up knowledge, I'm happy to keep engaging you. I've answered your questions very clearly, and I've also asked you questions to which you have not answered very clearly. I am making statements like there is no formula for truth. Well, was that
What is
true?
the
I'm
formula
trying.
for truth if that is untrue?
Well, I would say the formula for truth is starting with God, as I've clearly stated before, and you don't have to agree with that by any means, but I've already told you that's my answer. I guess you would never hear me say that there is no formula for truth, because I know that that's a self-refuting statement, and that we're all here making truth claims and knowledge claims to which we wholeheartedly believe. I think that everybody here believes some things are true, and they believe that they do have a foundation for truth. I just don't think we've really heard that from you.
What? Yeah, you haven't heard that from me because there isn't one.
Okay. Well, then, I mean, the conversation's over, because why are we having this discussion if we're not making truth claims that we believe? And I would just say that's an interesting way to live.
The point is that you don't have a truth claim. That's the point.
Sure. Okay. Well, what
If
else you
there's
got?
if there's no formula for truth, then your truth claim doesn't apply. Your claim of truth is
Maybe I'm
untrue.
talking past you here. Your claim is that there's no formula for truth. That's not my claim. That's not my foundation.
What makes you so certain that God is the basis of truth?
Well, I've become convinced through reading His Word. I think there's a supernatural action of the Holy Spirit. I think the impossibility of the contrary, and the fact that you have conversations with people that don't believe in truth. That
So
is the truth for God.
So you are convinced because you became convinced?
Sure. By God. I'm a Christian.
You were convinced that God exists because you were convinced that God exists.
I'm convinced that God exists by His actions. As I said before, I believe in predestination and election.
Why?
I would say God revealed Himself to us. I think that He does that generally and special revelation through the Bible and sometimes miraculous things that exist outside of the uniformity of nature, which is only solely dependent on Him and His actions. I would also say there is a general revelation inside of creation. Everybody is shown a common grace. You have relationships, you love people, you know things are moral. We're able to have very interesting discussions about truth, knowledge, even though none of us really probably 100% agree with each other. I mean, there's so much evidence for God, and yeah, I would say that is one of the few reasons that I believe He exists.
So, what are these miracles? Where can I see one? And why do some people not have a sense of morality? And what about all of the people that are being raped and murdered in Africa or Saudi Arabia? Where is God's common grace to them?
So this goes back, again, presuppositionally to your foundations for truth, knowledge, and morality. What you've just
No,
made is
it
a
does
knowledge.
not. You
Well, I'm
said
just
that.
explaining to you what you said you wanted explanation, not question.
And well, what is happening to the people in Africa does not have to do with my belief that we are devoid of truth. What is happening to them in Africa directly contradicts this common grace conception that you have. That is what it contradicts. It does not contradict me.
Okay, what is your definition of the common grace that I'm talking about?
Well, I've only heard what you said, that we can have relations, that we can talk.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do not get those luxuries.
Okay. So I
So
guess
it's not a common grace.
Mm-hmm. Well, common grace is shown to everyone, right? And that they are able to live and breathe in God's world, right? This doesn't mean that bad things don't happen because sin is in the world. I think there is what I would say an unfounded claim that God has to solve every problem in the world, right? God does
So
what
this
He
is
wills.
this
and
is
that is
for
dependent.
so the source is the sin in the world, right? So this it goes returns to the source of evil. This is a contradiction of God's good nature. You say that He allows certain things, but if He was good, He would not allow them.
Yeah, that's another claim because I don't think you can actually define objective goodness. I don't think you can tell me 100% what is
I'm not
good.
defining it. I'm going by the Bible.
Again,
This
but
is
you don't
God.
believe
God contradicts Himself.
Yeah, and I would disagree with that. I think I've already shown you that God does not contradict Himself, and I've also tried to hold you to some sort
How
of
have you shown
standard.
that?
Like I just
I
said,
missed
I've
that.
tried. I mean, you've missed a lot, brother, but we're being patient with you. So be thankful to God for that.
Could you please reiterate then? How does the evil in the world not contradict God?
Sure. What is one evil thing, and why do you think it shouldn't happen?
God doesn't like people being murdered.
No,
And
I didn't
people are
ask you
murdered.
what you think God does or doesn't like. Okay, murder. Why is murder wrong?
Because God says so.
Okay, yeah, but that's not your standard. That's my standard. You said
Yeah,
you don't
and
believe in
I'm
God.
attacking your standard. You are on the defense here. I hope
I'm
that's what you expected from this title.
a little bit. I think you're having a hard time following the conversation, though. What I'm asking you is, why do you
That's
believe
kind of
murder is wrong?
condescending to my intelligence.
I mean, I'm really not trying to condescend to you, man, but I think we can all see what's going on here. So, I mean, I'm happy to continue the
Well,
conversation, but if you feel upset, you're
I don't
happy
know,
to
but
leave now.
I'm not upset. I don't know
Okay.
if I'm missing anything. You have not been able to show to me that God does not contradict Himself. He says, "Do not murder. Have no
Okay.
false idols." People have false idols and murder all the time. He says,
Yeah.
"Do not covet."
Okay.
People covet. He says,
Mm-hmm.
"Do not lay with a do not lay with a man as a woman," and people do. One of the moderators does. Why would God create him like that? He's contradicting Himself.
So why does God create people to either be allowed to live in their sin or be saved by Him? Is that your question?
Why would a good God create people that need to be saved?
Yeah. What? Can you ask that again? Sorry. Why
Why would a good God create people that need to be saved?
Well, the ultimate answer is for His own glory. That's why God does anything at all to glorify Himself, and that's kind of the Reformed position.
It's like the
Again,
omnipotence thing, I think, might help with this conversation. I mean, Tristan talks about the rape and the whatever going on in Africa, and you guys are talking about common grace. How does His omnipotence and all, I mean, didn't He create all of this knowing that all of this was going to happen? Or, I mean, I don't know if that could be a catalyst to maybe help, because you guys aren't
yeah,
seeming to reconcile with anything, so maybe, I don't
yeah,
know, or maybe that,
yeah.
I don't know.
Tristan, I'm gonna answer that, but I'm gonna move on to the next caller as well, man. But you're welcome to call back. I got 4 other people on the line.
All right.
As far as as far as what you just asked about Perry, yeah, I do think that God created knowing that things would happen. I also think that that kind of assumes that God's under some sort of obligation to stop all bad things from happening, and then it detracts from kind of the human responsibility of us to restrain evil. I think God restrains evil all the time. I mean, I don't know where the standard comes from that God has to stop everything bad from happening. I think that's again kind of a moral, claim against God, which I'm happy to discuss. But I would want to kind of know other people's foundations for why they think those things are wrong ultimately. But yeah, unless you got something, Perry, we'll go to Christian. Christian may be here.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough.
Christian, you there, man?
Yep.
Hey, welcome back, man. We kicked you off last time because we couldn't hear you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to I really don't want to go all the in the debate, but because
Okay.
I think that you have been going around in circles for like an hour, and
Sure.
it so and I
2:19
think that
actually.
and I think that it it can be productive to parse out some things for another show.
Mm-hmm.
The first big one, I think that most people really don't grasp. I think that yeah, I concede that that Christianity starts from a circular argument in assuming God, or presupposing it will be
Mm-hmm.
the word God.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that I'm not talking this. I'm not talking this out of my ass. Very
Mm-hmm.
good secular philosophers have pointed, I think, that it is the problem of induction, that you cannot prove the scientific method. You have to assume the scientific method to produce any kind of scientific belief. The scientific method cannot prove the scientific method. You have to assume it.
Yeah.
So if you are taking for the base of your scientific view, or not naturalistic or materialistic view of science, you have to understand that you assume the scientific method that other people are using to produce the
Yeah.
knowledge that you take as valid. So from we are even though we are what I'm saying is that you have to assume that the other people, that the other person that you're talking to,
Yeah.
is not having a different human experience about around these subjects
Oh yeah.
of knowledge that are completely alien to you. I have a circular reasoning at the base of my foundations. You have
Mm-hmm.
another circular reasoning at the base of your foundations. That's something that I think seriously we cannot escape. I think that
Yeah.
I had a very productive discussion the other day with G, because he from another completely from the other side of the discussion, uh, he doesn't see a mind body problem like I do, and he doesn't see he sees this same problem like I do, that you have to assume something at the base of any system
Yeah.
to for it to work. And I think even Gödel did this for math,
Yeah.
that he
Gödel's
proved that,
incompleteness theorems.
yeah,
Yeah.
he proved that
Yeah.
for math you have to assume math to the basic
Yes.
axioms of math to do math.
Christian, why don't you
So
let
Yes.
Thomas jump in here real quick, man?
I was just going to tell you real quick, Chris. You're 100% right. Gödel's incompleteness theorems definitely mean that that math at a certain point breaks down to where you can't prove it anymore. It's the same with the logical quote unquote absolutes.
yeah, and I think that
It's yeah.
those that connects, you are more informed to me than me with this. And I think that that connects with set theory. I think that some people are
Well, you were
positing
right
as,
about the problem of induction. We induce science. I mean, there is no other way to get around it. When you observe something and create a hypothesis, it's all through induction and abduction.
yeah,
So, and
I'm
we
not saying
assume
that
uniformitarianism. So,
I'm not saying that this proves God. What I'm saying is that you have to assume that the other person is capable of reasoning equally as you, even though he's not coming to the same conclusions or is not assuming the same things that you. You have to take, if you want to have a good faith discussion and not be going around in circles, and everybody is going to be throwing around their best arguments, and you are gonna to parse out what you like about it, what you don't like, and have a better and more productive discussion, you have to assume that the other person has something to give and is going through a similar mental process than you, even though if it's not coming to the same conclusions.
Yeah,
And I think
it's a
that philosophy
compromise.
is a compromise. That philosophy, I think, is at that place right now, and there's that was one of the reasons that conversation the other day with G was pretty good for me. It was actually something awesome. But and the other thing is, I think that it's the problem of definitions. I think that Thomas has a definition that maybe people are not taking seriously about God, and instead of engaging with his definition, people are trying to make Thomas engage with their definition, and that's bringing a lot of problems to the discussion. So I think that would be something good for another show, to try to simply engage with his definition, even if you don't like it, because if not, you're not going to advance a lot, and you're going to
I,
be
I
repeating
can see
yourself a
that. If
lot.
you're trying to talk with someone, I think you should probably try to talk with them in their lexicon, in their vernacular and
Yeah,
vocabulary. But there's also got to be a bit of compromise from both sides. They've got to talk a little bit in yours too. So there's got to
yeah,
be,
I know.
some way for each other to understand each other.
And just the last thing is that it's not. I think that at the God debate is not about winning at the end. It's just you have to throw uh, your best arguments, and if you like some, you like some. If you hate some, you hate some, and because at the end it's a discussion that's uh, I think I really think that at the end it's a discussion that depends on uh, what you are willing to accept or don't accept, and I don't think that that's really something strange. I think that most things in life uh, go to that level that if you don't like uh, math, you don't study math. I think people can come to with you to all with all the great things and all the money they produce with math or whatever. But if you don't like math, you are not going to like it for more that people try to bring good arguments about it. I think I'm not. And I'm not. I don't think it is subjective at the end. But I will need to think more about it to parse a good argument about it. But at the end is something about choice, I guess, and I don't know any other way to say it. But I just wanted to say just the last thing is that I think that from and this is a critic for example for both sides. One is for Thomas, because I think it is it's really not that productive to not engage in the difficult contradictions that you can find in the scriptures. I'm not saying that I don't believe in scripture. I obviously do, but scripture has a lot of difficult things to parse out, and they are contradictory. For example, uh, a lot of commentators, for example, see in Genesis 1 both linear and circular time. In Apocalypse, in the Revelation, you find that I think it's in chapter 13 that it is said to you. It said that Christ was sacrificed since the foundations of creation. He was sacrificed. That means that it was the plan all along. That's pretty difficult to maybe to many people to square in this free will determinism debate that people have. And for example, God says that He brings light and He brings life and He brings that and He creates darkness and creates brings destruction in Isaiah. And these are things that are difficult to people to
Yeah.
really comprehend in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Oh, for
And
sure.
maybe it's good for another debate of this to
Yeah.
try to engage more in those contradictions. And I know you are presupposition. God.
Yeah. Presuppositionalist.
it's difficult. I know my first language,
Yeah, you're
but
crushing it, man.
it will
You're
be,
great.
it will be productive to parse out those contradictions for people, what you think about them. And in the
Yeah.
other side, I think that people really overestimate the problem that you're trying
Yeah.
uh, to or maybe people overestimate the argument that you are
Yeah.
making for atheism
Yeah.
sometimes, because I was going I think I really think that atheism is a really good philosophy individually, but on a collective scale, I think that at some point it will break down horribly,
Yeah.
because someone is gonna exploit the lack of meaning. Someone is gonna do it at some
Yeah.
point, and I
Yeah.
say that the lack of meaning in the teleological sense, in the final
Mm-hmm.
cause. Someone is gonna fill that void with a final cause
Yeah.
that's gonna be destructive for the group. That's
Yeah.
something that I've seen in history continually. And the other thing is that I found this really good essay the other day from a scholar that I actually posted in the Discord. That's called "On God and Loss." I have heard a lot of good arguments around this before, but his essay was pretty good about it. And it's this idea that basically in any culture that you look,
Yeah.
even tribal people, uh, everybody has a concept of divine law, and that's actually something that you cannot simply say that's a book of of evolution that easily.
Yeah.
And there were various books and studies that I was eyeing in his essay, that of studies that people have done on this, that even
Yeah.
in Inuit and Inuit cultures, and I think the other one was the Bedouins, and another one that tribal people in Canada. And he has a personal experience being a missionary in Cambodia,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about how everybody, even though they won't have organized religion, they understand that their loss comes from an spiritual plane.
Yeah.
And there has been many studies on this. And if it's a bug of evolution, you have to really explain why is that a bug of evolution.
Yeah.
If not, in that's gonna be a place that the
Yeah.
atheistic explanation will have more power to
Yeah.
for someone that
Christian,
sees
let's
that
go
puts
ahead
a
and
lot
let
of value in
Thomas
final thoughts.
or Christian, let's let Thomas, Jason, Kevin, Perry, or Scott kind of respond to that if they want to, and then we need to get Brady and Andrew in here.
Yeah, and I will answer maybe 2 minutes, and I have to go.
Oh, you got to go in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I cede the floor to whoever.
I was
Scott,
going to
Perry.
say something. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned something about
I got nothing.
atheism is okay for like one person, but when it's like when it's like passed out to the masses, something terrible is going to happen. That already happens with Christianity. That has nothing to do with whether somebody doesn't believe in God or not. That's just something people do, right? I mean, if you might have a case there if you could point out that that's never happened with religious groups, but the amount of death and murder that's been caused by people thinking they have the right answer and that their religion okays them to do horrendous actions to other people, I don't think that's a very um, good hill to stand on, or a good
I'm
yeah. It's not.
I'm not I'm not saying that's that's not gonna happen in Christianity. What I'm saying is that when you have a final cause, a teleology in the system, hijacking it is much more difficult. A good example of this is that through history, in some sense, when in more Christian states, what you in medieval times and on all of that, a lot of the fights are around how to correctly implement the system, you could say. And the the trying in some sense the Christian system, or even the Islam, takes away a lot of power. Even in Islam, is actually much difficult to see how they limit the state of the power of the state. But as Christianity evolved from Judaism, the monarchical system of Judaism was a pretty neutral one. The 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 vision of God in Judaism takes away a lot of the monarch and the political power. That actually transferred a lot to Christianity. But when you take out God from the picture altogether, you get our last century that was I think was in my opinion was worse than anything that we have seen.
Yeah.
Oh, come on
all right,
now. I
Christian.
mean, just look at the
Christian, you
look
said you had to
look
go
at
in
the
a minute, so we'll let
Crusades.
you go just for a little bit longer, and then we'll have to get somebody else. Okay?
You got about 30
Yeah, I
seconds.
mean,
Bring somebody else on.
to that, I would just point out the Crusades. That wasn't a matter of like them deciding who was right or wrong. No, it was the Pope basically said it's our right to go in there and kill, destroy, maim, and take what we want to take. That's what God says is okay. That's what Christians get to do. So I mean, like you're making a statement there, and you're just accepting it as being true, but there's no good reason to accept that as being true. And if you just want to say that's well, this is just how I feel about it. That's totally fine, but that doesn't mean it's a justified belief.
Well, like I'm saying, I'm not, and this goes back to this thing. I don't think that those experiences are different are especially fundamentally different from system to system. What I'm saying is that in some systems that can be even more dangerous, I could say, because at least in one system you have all bases covered. If you have a void in teleology, someone that wants to abuse the system, it's gonna provide it. And I think that you have even really good modern examples of what you, and I think there's even a book about this that I put on my wish list. That for
You got about 15 seconds,
Yeah,
Christian. I'm gonna let you
Chris,
go.
I'm sorry
Doing
to
good
cut you
now.
off, buddy, but we got
yeah,
people.
it's my last point. My
Okay.
last point that calls the invasion to Iraq as and I think the Spanish war that the U.S. has with the Spanish people, they cast them as crusades, because in the end we keep doing those things. We only don't do it in the name of religion. And I think that what our systems are doing now have even less ways to parse these things out that what we have with more prevalent religion in our culture. And
Okay.
that's awesome.
All right. Awesome,
I got
Christian.
you, brother.
Thanks,
Thank
brother.
you for coming to see us. Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, we're talking about what's wrong with Christianity. We're making some epistemological, veritological, ethical claims. Talking about crusades. Why are they
And we
bad?
got the
Why are they
Navekian
good?
unit in the house.
Navek is here. Real quick.
Am I live? Don't put me on the spot like that.
All right.
Sorry, Brady. What's up, man? Sorry.
Hey, Thomas, real quick.
Can you hear me? Mic check.
Mic check.
Okay, sounds
You
like
there? Go for it.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Bangburgers, do you copy?
You good? We can hear you, man.
Okay, cool.
You good?
It's my first time doing it on the laptop. Sorry about that. Well, I'm about to drop a nuclear bomb on truth on you guys. Sorry, kind of fumbling here, but so there's a lot wrong with Christianity. First of all, the Bible can be interpreted in 3 different ways. There's the Muggle way.
Brady, you're breaking up a bit. I'm sorry to interrupt you, buddy. You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I'm gonna hop over to my cell phone and I'm gonna join you guys on there.
Call back, man.
We'll take you right back in.
Yep.
How about now?
Oh yeah, much better. Yeah.
Okay, so
you good?
What I was saying is that the Bible can be interpreted in 3 different ways. There's the literal Muggle translation, which is, Jesus came and freed mankind from the old laws of God, and God made us, and blah blah blah. And then there's the allegorical version of Christianity, where anyone who's taken psychedelics can like look at Christianity and see the obvious psychedelic connection and how it's like an allegory for other deeper mystical spiritual truths. Like, for example, the story about Christ walking on water is actually a metaphor for him mastering his sexual energies. And I mean, that would have been very clear to any student of the mystery schools in ancient times, but not necessarily clear to someone who's not been initiated to these larger stories. And then you also have apparently there might be a gematria interpretation of the Bible where you use a magical square and like codes to find a hidden message within the Bible. And I need to look on that more before I can verify that or not, but there's just 3 that I've heard of. So that's one issue with Christianity right off the bat. Second issue with Christianity is that it was created by Judaism as a psychological control mechanism for the Canaanites and I guess like their enemies, basically. They created religions that were specifically designed for their enemies. And like the plan is to like trick them with these religions and get them to do their bidding and stuff. And it's been working out fantastically for thousands of years. And the biggest secret of Christianity goes back to the psychedelic connection. If you look at the Temple of Solomon that the rabbis worshipped in, they had the inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, and they would burn incense on 2 pillars within the inner sanctum. Only the rabbi class, the upper priesthood, were allowed into the inner sanctum. And they were burning incense, you know, your regular old frankincense, the tree sap that smells good. And on the other pedestal, they were burning a mixture of cannabis and animal dung, presumably using the animal dung to reach a high enough temperature to make the cannabis psychoactive by decarboxylating the THC. And so they would basically hotbox the inner sanctum and get super baked. And they had a whole field of cannabis growing behind the temple that only the priests were allowed into. There's even a story about how one of the rabbi's sons accidentally wandered into the cannabis field. One day became exposed to the cannabis and intoxicated. And according to rabbinical law, they were supposed to stone him to death. And so they're like, wait a minute, let's maybe get together, have a meeting, talk to God about this one, see what we could do. So they get together, they fucking hotbox the Holy of Holies, I'm sure, get super baked. They all talk to God, and God said, okay, well, this one time, since it's your son, we're going to let it slide. He's a good kid, you know, basically, which is how this shit works. I hope this kind of illuminates the reality of this situation, along with the fact that the rabbis would eat the quote unquote sacrifices to Yahweh, you know, so people would bring like the very best of their crop and their flock and whatnot. They would bring it to the temple for God. Of course, it was to feed the fucking priests. You know what I mean? Is what it's really for. So it's a blatant psychological control mechanism that's meant to keep the slave class away from psychedelics and allow the inbred ruling class to only have access to psychedelics. What do you guys think? That's pretty big. I consider that to be a pretty big problem.
Yeah, I guess
haven't even touched on the child rape aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I would just come at you from a presuppositional approach before I address kind of these concerns, you know, right up front. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I see you making knowledge claims, and these are clearly moral and ethical claims against. I'm assuming you're taking this out of the Old Testament. I haven't read that, but you're great, Trav. But I mean, what's wrong with any of the stuff that you just said? Why do you have an issue with it?
Well, like I said, they're denying access to plant medicine to the slave class. So we essentially have a slave culture within the Abrahamic cult, and that encompasses Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all together. All 3 religions are a major slave cult.
Sure.
Working together.
Okay, that's a huge claim, which I would love to get into.
Toxic. Like, we all kind of got together as a planet and decided that slavery is inherently kind of toxic to the planet, and we need a more harmonious relationship with our fellow humans. And as time progresses, we're slowly expanding that consciousness to other things. And something that really helped in that situation, along with the healing of major psychological trauma that we've suffered as a planet, as a whole human culture, is access to those plant medicines, specifically mushrooms and cannabis. Like the combination of those two things, nothing really works better, outside of maybe DMT, acacia, breathing exercises, meditation, all that kind of stuff works too. But cannabis
Brady, interesting that
yeah.
what you're mentioning, because I know, like, when it comes to hierarchy, with feudalism, religion was supporting that. It upheld that, but a lot of the, like with the Black Plague, people's faith, religious worldview got shook, because no matter how hard they prayed, nothing would happen, and even when people were killed because you're intolerables within society, still nothing happened, and people switched over to the Renaissance. They switched over to humanism, in a worldview, switched from a religious worldview.
Glory,
And
hallelujah! They
and
discovered the Philosopher's Stone.
that's when what you call it, the modernization of Europe started to boom at that point.
Yes, and actually, if you look in ancient
With
times
Rome.
before the rise
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
Judaism,
And
when
Rome
they
was
had
very,
King
and yeah.
Solomon worship another god, Asherah, and they would actually worship her by burning cannabis in the streets and having orgiatic, like, sex parties and stuff like this. A wild human time, And it was
Sounds
like
good
one
to
of the
me.
most productive, abundant episodes in ancient human history. And you can see where they come in and they ban the worship of Asherah. They ban the public burning of incense. That's when they start making it a controlled substance, really, for the first time in the ancient times. Believe it or not, cannabis and psychedelics were actually a controlled substance in ancient times as well. And you can see that when this is initiated, we go into a dark period. And then we had the Enlightenment with the Renaissance, like you mentioned, which is when the alchemists rediscovered the Philosopher's Stone, which is an extract of the acacia tree, specifically the black acacia. And what they would do is they would take this acacia extract, they would touch a coal to it, a burning hot end of a stick. They would touch it next to it, and they would inhale the vapors, and they would be smoking DMT at that point. And that's what the Philosopher's Stone is.
I have
It's basically DMT.
I have a question.
Yeah, you guys go ahead.
Which isn't to say what you're saying is false, but I'm just really curious, like, and after I ask this question and hear your answer, I'm gonna hop off and go to bed. So I also want to thank you for having me on stage, or as a speaker.
Awesome. You're awesome, Kev.
Yeah, bro,
You are too. My question is, for what you're describing with all this stuff, that seems really out of accordance with the history I've read about Christianity. Can you tell me any, like, historians that endorse this view?
Brian Mudarescu is a Jesuit scholar who was instructed to write a book recently about the recent discoveries they made from the Pillars of the Inner Sanctum. After that discovery was made, basically the Jesuits instructed Brian, who was a Jesuit scholar all the way from high school, they instructed him to write a book called The Immortality Key, The Secret History of the Religion with No Name. And that's like a nonfiction Dan Brown novel that you could read. Basically goes through a lot of the information I'm talking about, not all of it. If you want more information about the Philosopher's Stone being DMT, I would refer you to a Scottish Rite Freemason who is mapping the psychedelic landscape and the experiences people have. I'll try to find a link to that. I'll drop it in the comments. You can check it out later.
Are you saying religion started from people tripping?
Yes. Basically, all religion comes from people tripping. Basically, language comes from people tripping. Hermes Trismegistus is like an entity that you meet in the psychedelic realm. He's the one who taught us math. This is a non-human entity, angel, demon, alien, whatever you want to call it.
And they didn't take it literally. It was more of a metaphorical story.
Well, Christianity, it started off as Gnostic Christians, which were taking ancient knowledge from Egypt, and they were hiding it in secret stories to hide from the Romans, because what was happening is the Romans were going out and actively killing and murdering, witches, people with psychic propensities, which can actually be measured on a genetic level now. And I know it sounds crazy, but there's genetic evidence for the hunting of witches now. You can actually go back and trace. And I'll try to find articles to as much of this stuff as I can. I know it's a lot of information, pretty dense, but you can Google me on all of this stuff, and look, you don't have to take my word for it. This requires no faith on any of your parts whatsoever. You can verify this yourself with human history. It's just modern discoveries. This is just new stuff that we're discovering, which, yeah, totally blows the lid off what we've been told for the last 2,000 years or plus, But it's a very obvious answer to the problem of Christianity and the problem of our modern culture. And I would suggest that no political renaissance is going to benefit the planet as a whole. There's nobody's going to win and fucking make the planet better. We're all no better than the very worst of us. Honestly, there's a huge amount of truth to that. The whole of humankind is only as strong as our fucking weakest members, which says something. We've come a long way, but a better solution than any kind of political revolution, war, whatever the fuck, is a psychedelic renaissance, where we simply start taking psychedelics, living a more harmonious life, empowering ourselves, healing ourselves, growing our own food, cleansing the planet, and we can turn the planet into a Garden of Eden, utopia-like state within 10 years. It only takes 10 years.
You will get no argument from me on the free psychedelics. Just stop by whenever you're doing that.
Yeah, this shouldn't be so much of a hard sell, but you would be shocked at how much pushback I get from the left.
I'm the easiest sell for psychedelics there is, my brother.
I know. I'm gonna tell you. Since I've learned this information and I've been sharing it with people, the most skepticism and pushback come. Well, I'll say this: it's equal parts from the left and the right, and it shocks me. There's about 50% of conservatives who are like, oh, this is bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about. God's going to kill, whatever. And then there's about 50% of liberals that are like, oh, you think mushrooms are going to solve everything, blah, blah, blah. They don't know what you're stoned, right? You know what I mean? Like, they write it off as nonsense. And,
I wouldn't generalize. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just saying I wouldn't generalize so much as to say 50% of, because, that's, who knows what the percentage actually is. You know what I mean? We would have to have specific statistics on that, but I see where you're coming from, dude. Like,
from my point of view, it's totally anecdotal.
Yeah, I get you. I get you.
You have to understand. I'm one of the few people that have studied all this information for years.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is you actually said that you're not stating this, that we have to take it on faith. We can look it up. That's all amazing, but how do we know that language and religion came from interactions with psychedelics and the altered states of consciousness?
Interesting question. The answer goes a little bit back to Christianity in the form of glossolalia.
Yeah, I know what glossolalia is. Glossolalia, right. Whatever.
So that's where someone makes random noises with their mouth, like habla dubla dibru dabru dibru da.
Some people consider it a form of meditation. Some people consider it like activating the epileptic gene, or there's all kinds of theories on it.
Yeah, it's great. It is highly functional as a psychological tool for opening up parts of your brain, for activating certain neural networks within the brain. And it's just one of 1,000 different tools in the psychological tool trick of the human body.
So why, when I trip, do I not learn new languages?
You're not doing enough. If you crank up that dose meter a little bit,
all right. I'll remember that
before long that when you make noises with your mouth, or when you're listening to music, when you hear a sound, you'll have a visualization that accompanies the noise. Yes. And before long, you'll come in contact with entities that will actually encourage you to continue making noise with your mouth, and like basically what they really want is for you to create new words. They get
So
very
everyone has
excited.
like a different experience going into a trip. I have been high as a kite on ayahuasca. I mean, just deep in the DMT, bro. Like naked in the streets DMT. And I have never met any entities.
Oh man, wow. Really, you were definitely seeing some shit, right? Like the snake, the
Oh,
multicolored snakes.
I mean, I saw things that resembled things that I knew about, like Ouroboros and, sacred geometry and all of these kind of things like that. But I know it gets a lot deeper than that. But I mean, to say that humans can abstract language and religion from just, no brain state that can understand it, and then we trip and then now we can understand it, that just seems, it's too much of a jump for me, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a huge jump.
was it your first time doing ayahuasca? Was it like a one-time experience? Did you do like 3 sessions?
I've done ayahuasca twice. I've done mescaline 3 or 4 times, and I've done peyote once.
Thomas, you don't
I've
think
done acid and all kinds of other stuff a lot too.
Yeah, ever seen entities on any other substance?
I'm
at
sorry,
all?
I didn't hear either one of you.
Like, I guess you've never seen entities yet. You have yet to encounter an entity, from what I understand.
Maybe I will. Maybe I will.
I think you will. I think, like I said, just turn the dose up a little bit. I would recommend smoking DMT. It works really well.
I've turned the dose up pretty high before.
Well, I recommend the Philosopher's Stone. Now, I'll say this. It sounds like you're in a space that I like to call the waiting room. And I've never heard it really described this way. But basically, when you first start tripping, you enter a space that is what I call the waiting room. It's like a big dome, and the entire dome interior is like a mandala, a beautiful mandala, right? And this mandala is your light body. This is like a visual representation of your energetic field that you're looking at. And it's kind of interesting. There will be
we getting into
initial
chakras
entities.
and
That's what
energetic
Carl
fields
Jung
now?
thought, isn't it?
Yeah, we are kind of getting into that. And basically what happens is that when your chakras completely line up and the Kundalini thing lines up, you kind of have to breathe deeply, sit up straight, pay attention, focus. You have to really kind of approach the situation, totally surrender, leave your fucking ego at the door, as they say. And there's like a big face that comes to you. It's like a Joker. And this guy is kind of like the judge to decide if you're ready to enter a sacred space or not, right? And if this guy gives you if you pass this guy's vibe check, he's gonna vibe check you basically. And if he says you're cool, you go in. If you're a douchebag asshole and you have some more learning to do, he'll sit there and fuck with you, and he'll turn into like a demon. He'll scare you.
All right, Brady. I know Thomas wants to talk about this forever. I got 2 other people on the line.
No, I'm good. You go ahead.
Bro, feel free to call back. I didn't even get a chance to respond to you. Let's do that another time because, man, they are so high on this conversation. I don't even know what's up.
If you guys want to make a conversation specifically about things we've encountered on trips, like that's a podcast I'm actually looking forward to making. And I'm ready to do that whenever anyone's ready. Yeah. But I'm going to pass the mic. You guys have a good night.
Hey, man. Later. All right, so we're getting into psychedelic drugs as an argument against Christianity. I'm not exactly sure what the argument was.
No, I was not arguing against Christianity. I was just saying if he was handing out free psychedelics, I wanted them. All the other stuff, I don't know too much about. We could talk about that another time. But
so we've been going for almost 3 hours here. We got 2 more callers. I'm happy to go as long as you guys want. Thomas, Trav, Scott, whatever you guys think. Talking about the problems with Christianity, what are the issues?
I don't think you're going to have any end of atheists call in and want to talk to you. I think you've got you being the only one here, brother, and I'm sorry, but you're going to have to contend. So
I love it.
Enter at your own risk.
Right on. Andrew, come on in. What do you got, buddy? Andrew? He's probably waiting so long he passed out. That's my bad. That's on me, Andrew. That's not on you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up? Yeah. What you got, man?
Hey, sorry about that. I've never used this app before.
No worries.
Is there a way I can get you on the speaker on through here? It's kind of hard to hear you. I'm not sure how the app works. I can work with this if I need to.
I'm not really sure if you can do it through your phone or through the app.
Well, I'm on my phone.
Okay.
That's okay. I'll work with this.
Okay.
So I won't be as charming as talking about psychedelics, but so I actually have my own channel. If I have permission, like you guys can look at it for yourself just to verify. I don't want to throw it out there without you guys' permission.
No,
But I have a channel where I actually
Mm-hmm.
go through like the Bible itself and
Mm-hmm.
debunk like ideas and go over things that are like obviously wrong. And I don't want to like go through all that at once. I was trying to stick to something simple.
Just pick one.
Since your topic is what's wrong with Christianity.
Yeah.
So I got 3 different points. I don't know if you want me to run through them all at once, or if you want me to go through each one and you guys can kind of tackle them one by one. It's up to you.
Why don't you just do one by one for simplicity's sake?
Sounds fair. Okay, so the second 2 actually I referred to some specific verses to make points, so that might make it easier.
Sure.
So with my first point, and this is let me give you a quick background. I grew up as a Christian, like in a Christian household and stuff. I didn't lose quote faith in Christianity until like I was on my own back in like 2016.
Oh yeah.
So like I grew up as a Christian. I know what it's like to actually believe and to, and everything. And I've actually re-looked at the book, and that's what I'm doing now in the past year. I'm sorry, did you say something?
I was just agreeing. I was saying that's good. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm just saying, like, I can relate to certain things, but like, I also feel like, okay, I'll just read my point because I have this pre-written.
Yeah.
Something that I've had questions about since I was a kid is the diversity of understanding a single book has led to many interpretations. Truth can't have many interpretations. A science book or a math book is true because it has been proven without a doubt, regardless of who reads it. So, like, this is my first point that I'd like you guys to kind of tackle if you want. If it's God inspired, like I don't know whether or not, you guys are, and it may be variable, whether it's you guys take it literal or in parable. So that might help, but there's still points later that it won't matter. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I take the Bible naturally. I think the Bible intends it to be read a specific way. So whether it's poetry, apocalyptic, physical, literal, or just literal according to the liturgy or literature, that's
right. I didn't know if you was fundamentalists or if you was kind of like I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, so like not everything was literal, but they kind of cherry picked what they wanted to be literal.
For sure.
You have to believe that Jesus died on the cross, and you have to believe in the flood. Everything else can be a parable, like being swallowed by a giant fish and stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like their exegesis was just kind of weak and a little bit more self-serving and event-driven in terms of trying to get people so they could hear the pastor speak so they could have more baptisms. They'd probably be more Arminian in their version of soteriology as well as premillennial dispensational in their eschatology, and that is going to have some serious, serious effects on how that church behaves and whether or not they're actually part of Jesus' church.
Sure. And like, okay, and you actually remind me of the fourth point. I'll throw this in here. Like, I was baptized when I was 7 years old, and like, and because you reminded me of that point, and to me, looking back on that, like, that makes no sense. As a full-grown adult, like I've tried to talk to my own parents about this and other adults that believe that's one thick book. Like, I love Stephen King, but it took me forever to get through the Bible, and like. There's no way a 7-year-old can comprehend what they're, vowing their entire life to. I think that that's not right. And like that's where I believe like that's brainwashing. Any thoughts on that before I move to actual point 2?
I mean, yeah, so you're getting into a pretty big topic, which is baptism, right? What is the meaning and purpose, right? Are you more Southern Baptist or Reformed Baptist in your view of what baptism is for and when it is to be done? Or are you more...
What was taught to me as far as baptism, it was the idea of like, when you say that you believe in Jesus, and then like, and you confirm that with the pastor, and then they dunk you in the water, you come out, and you're like, I'm not really sure how else to explain that other than I don't think that anybody can be convinced that they truly believe something when you don't understand the context of it. That's all I was going to get at with that.
Yeah. I would
There's
actually.
no way children can understand that depth. No matter if you're a Mormon, if you're if you're a Mormon, if you're a Catholic, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, I don't know if they all. I'm sure they all have, because they all have different interpretations. They may do it differently, which is part of my first point. Like, how can a God-inspired book inspire so many different versions of the same idea? It kind of sounds like it would be the God of confusion rather than the God of truth, or at least
Yeah.
do something to correct it.
Sure. I mean, I would kind of disagree with you on that. I do understand that the Bible and really religions in general can be confusing for people, but what I encourage people to do is to start with what they believe and why they believe it. Like, what is your basic foundational worldview for why you do anything at all, right? Epistemologically speaking, what is your theory of knowledge, right? How do you know what you know?
Sure.
Metaphysically, how do you understand the reality around you? You could even call it veritology, kind of like truth. How do you know what's true? And then morality, how do you know it's ethical? So this is kind of an ethical and knowledge claim against the God of the Bible that says, hey, because there's three different versions of baptism, one can't be true. And I would just say that I think that there is one mode of baptism that is true, or view of baptism that is true, but I don't think that if you disagree on baptism, you're outside of God's church. However, I would say that if you have a different God and a different gospel than the Bible says, you are not in the true church, right? So, case in point, I am a Presbyterian, but I can fellowship with a Southern Baptist, really Reformed Baptist is what I would say, because we have the same God and same gospel. Now, a Mormon, we would have different gods and we'd have different gospels, and that's why we would not consider Mormons Christians. And if you are not you, but if people are Mormons and they want to talk about it, happy to talk about it. Not trying to be insulting.
I'm a
just telling you.
Luciferian. That's a whole different chapter. That's not even.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I said I grew up in a Southern Baptist. I'm not a Christian anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I'm tracking. I'm just kind of speaking to everybody here. And
sorry.
But yeah. So your question of baptism and how are there so many different baptisms? Like, well, there are different.
Well, no, I didn't mean so many different ones. I think I misled you by that.
No worries.
Well, all I meant was with the baptism, because that was a side note you reminded me of. I just don't think that a 7-year-old could possibly comprehend what they're dedicating their life to. That's all I meant by that. That's not actually one of my point 2 and point 3.
I would honestly say your parents, I think they misled you in what baptism is for.
It was the church, not just them.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not trying to be, rude or condescending to them, but I think that. Yeah, cool. I think I appreciate it. Nobody else thinks that. Just kidding. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that baptism you need to have a good understanding of who Jesus is to be baptized, because baptism isn't what saves you, and baptism, it's not you like pledging your life to God, right? It's kind of the recognition that you're in God's covenant, and I would get that out of Genesis 17.
Now, I feel like I could go back and forth on this, but like I want to go ahead and hit my other 2 points.
Yeah,
and
go
then
for it. Yeah,
if
go
we
for
have
it. Yeah.
time, then we can talk more.
Go through your point, and then we'll get Angie on, and then we'll bring you back.
Cool. So the second point, and this is where I start referring to the actual book, is so the book itself. All right, God-inspired ? Because whether you are a fundamentalist or take a lot of it in parables as lessons, the things in the Old and New Testament that God condones is outright wrong. So I'll let you kind of hit that, for what you want. That's kind of a vague statement, which is why point 3. No, I'm sorry, I didn't put a space. I do have some points specifically. Do you want to hit that before I give you the specifics? I have some Bible verses of Old and New that describe what I mean by that. It's up to you.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, whatever you.
All right, so
feel free.
I have it separated by God and Jesus, Old and New, because in the Old Testament in Leviticus 27, 3-4 and 7, where's my Bible? There it is. I don't know if you want me to read it out to you, but I did paraphrase that it has to do with promoting slavery and gives them specific instructions. And then with and I can read. I do have it open if you want me to for your
Why
audience.
don't you just hit the highlights? I believe you. I'll open it
Okay,
up
and
too.
then Numbers 31, 17 to 18 and 35 talks about slavery and like as far as taking out cities and killing the men and women but keeping the children that have not shown signs. You know what I'm talking about. So there's that. That's the Old Testament. That's Yahweh or God or whatever talking to Moses, giving him instructions. Like that's not cool. I don't see how that could possibly be of any form of love. And then Jesus with the new. A lot of people say, "Well, that's the Old Testament." I've heard this. I'm a fan of Aaron Raw, Matt Gilhonty, and now I forget his name, Andrew, Seth Andrews. So like I've heard like that's the Old Testament kind of argument. So I was prepared. New Testament with Matthew 10:34 through 37. Jesus is not for peace. Talks about bringing a sword between family. I don't have it memorized. I do have the book open if you wanted me to read it. Then Matthew 15:11 through 20. Where Jesus is discussing like poor ideas and I question on germ theory. Again, I don't have it memorized, but I do have the book open. I did look this up ahead of time. So like there's several things that like both God and Jesus, new and old, have very poor ideas that even if you didn't take the Bible literally, it's still giving very bad ideas. So whether you now I'm re-saying what I already said here. So point 3 was if you think the Bible is literal or not, both God and Jesus are bad ideas. Okay, so that's all 3.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So I would just say let's start with that last one. What do you believe about God and Jesus? Who do you think that the God of the Bible is? Do you think it's two separate gods because you said God and Jesus?
Okay, so this is kind of a weird thing where this brings in the Trinity, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
that's
believe
something
the
I've never really. That's always been confusing to me. To be honest with you, and in the end, I don't think it really matters. Like, I never again in Southern Baptist, and I've always been one of those gray area people where like they quit answering my questions. I'll just be direct with you. So I don't really have a perspective on if there's the Holy Spirit, Jesus, and God, or if it's just I mean, if you look at Genesis and one of the early things, God does not sound like He's alone. If they if they eat of the tree, they've eaten of the tree of knowledge. If they eat of both that and the tree of or the fruit of life, they will be like us. So, like, who is He referring to? Was Jesus already in existence, or was there other gods?
Absolutely.
Zeus up there too. Like that's, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I'm trying to be a little silly, but like, yeah, like there's a lot of to look into that. I don't know how to interpret a trilogy, but I don't see how a God that is knowledgeable enough to create the universe, and I love my science and physics and quantum mechanics, and any God who comprehends and make all that stuff happen should know about the germ theory. And if they really love people, one of the 10 commandments should be wash your hands, rather than don't worry about what you put into your mouth, it's what comes out of your mouth. Like that's great if you're so, trying to be, I guess trying to help people, be kind to others, but that's not much for like, helping society. We had to discover germ theory. I don't see anywhere where Jesus ever healed amputees, right? This is something I'm stealing from Seth Andrews, one of his videos, but like, and I actually have a verse in here. I didn't have it ready, but like there's actually a verse in here that God doesn't even allow people to go into heaven if you have like if your downstairs has been damaged. I can look that up if I need to. But like there's some things in there that just doesn't make sense for an all-knowing God. So my question to you, rather than the trilogy thing, I hate to answer your question with a question, is do you think God is all-knowing? And if He is, then where is the freedom? Like how can we have free will if if he knows everything, then first off, this book is a very poor idea to follow if you're like trying to be constructive for humanity. I got other things I could go on, but I know you got other people. So yeah, I'll let you speak. I don't know where else to go with that.
Yeah, so you brought up a lot of points, right? So the first point I think
know.
was kind of a diversity of understanding. The single book, there's lots of interpretations. Truth can't have that many interpretations. You like your science, your math books. Like if it's God inspired, how can he create so much confusion, right? The second point was kind of like parables as lessons, God versus Jesus. That's where we kind of talked about the Trinity. I'll tell you the biblical position from my point of view, the Reformed kind of view of Christianity is that the Trinity is how God exists as one being, right? It's not the Mormon God where there's three beings, right? It's not the...
I wasn't really sure where the trilogy come into three, but like I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, so when we talk about, you actually quoted it in Genesis when it says, let us make man in our image. If they eat this, they will be like us. Isaiah 43:10 talks about there is only one God. In fact, he doesn't know of any other gods. Isaiah 44:8 talks about the Trinity as well. Then we go all the way to the New Testament. In John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's talking about Jesus. It'll go on in John 1:14 as to Jesus entering his own creation and becoming flesh. And then you can go to John 16:13, I believe it is, maybe it's 14, where it talks about the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit as a he, and he will guide you into all truth. So the bottom line is the Bible consistently talks about there is only one God, one being of God, but there are three persons of God, and they're co-equal and co-eternal.
Is that a
right?
split personality? I feel like I don't want to be too silly with you though. Like I feel like that's kind of a silly question.
But yeah, so it's not modalism. Modalism is kind of what you're talking about, where the God is at one time he's the Father, and then he changes into the Son, and then he changes into the Holy Spirit.
It sounds more like a Hydra with like one body and three heads or something.
So it would be one being of God. Think of it as like this. So we're in a room, you and I are together, and we're with Thomas, and I say, hey, who is that? And I point at Thomas. Well, you would say, oh, that's Thomas. That's who he is. But what if I looked at him and I said, what is that? What would you say?
That's a human.
That's a human being, right? So we don't exist as God, but you can see how there is a being of human. We're not one being, but I can exist as an it or a what, and I can exist as a who. That's what it says in the Bible, right? So there's one being of God, and they have separate like persons, right? And they function differently, have different functions. And I say that just because that's what I believe the Bible says, is the verses I quoted you. And then throughout the Bible, you can kind of see how God interacts as those three persons with people.
Okay. Now, like, I don't want to, like, derail you. I hope you...
All good. But yeah, we can go on to the other stuff he said. I just wanted to...
Yeah, with, like, the Old and New Testaments and stuff, and, like, what I was quoting. And I didn't want to read it out loud unless you had time for me to flip through all the pages. But I did give you the actual notes if you wanted to look at them yourself and read them. Like, how is that good? On either the Old or New Testament, like either of these, it's not good. None of these is something that I would tell somebody that if I was a god, I wouldn't tell people, fear me to worship me. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I would just say, what is your standard of good? Because you're using your own personal standard of good.
Productive. Good is productive. Bad is not productive.
Okay, so why do you say that? Who told you that? Why do you believe that? That's your foundation.
Observation.
Be productive.
If you, well, I mean, if you do, let's say that you try to help people, in general. You don't have to be a Christian to be good willing. I'm sure you agree with that. So, like, if I go out of my way to, let's say, pick up trash on the side of the road at night, every other, maybe twice a week. It's an easy example. Well, whether anybody tells me I do or not, I know that it looks better, and I know that other people agree. I actually got told the other day that it doesn't matter. That is something I've been doing. But my point is that it's good as far as productive because you can tell a difference, and it is. Would you rather have a yard with trash or not trash? Like, you would rather have. I assume most people don't like trash in the yard, stuff like that. So, but on the flip side, so that's productive because you're not just helping yourself, because I think it's an eyesore, and getting rid of it, throwing it away makes me feel better, but it also makes the environment better as well. So like there's a lot of variables you go into that as far as how is that productive. It helps the environment. It helps other people feel better. People feel better if they're not seeing trash everywhere. And then what's not productive, right? Like instead of saying sin, I had this conversation with my friend the other day who is a Christian, and he kept using the word sin a lot. And I said that sin doesn't exist. Sin is a Christian idea. He said, well, how does that make sense? And this is exactly kind of the same argument we're making here, is that, goes back to productive and unproductive. Well, if I ran around stabbing people, like, would that be productive for other people? No, because they would be hurt. And it certainly wouldn't be productive for me, short term or long term, because, hopefully somebody would call the cops on me and I'd be in prison. Or worse, somebody would just shoot me. So, like, that's not productive. It doesn't have to be, the good or bad is just decide on whether or not something is productive or not. I guess that's how I view it.
That's a very utilitarian way. It's a cool. I like that. It's a cool, interesting way to put it. I've never heard anybody put it productive
It's
and
not my
non-productive.
idea. I got it from some other atheist videos.
Okay.
But I like it, and I stuck with it.
I'm gonna still consider it your idea. I thought it was a very
okay. Thank you.
That's a very cool. That's a very cool way of looking at it. I just wanted to point that out to you.
Well, there's a channel called Truth Hurts, and he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and I got it from his channel. But I'm sure I've heard similar versions of it from like Seth Andrews and Arden Raw.
Well, it's very similar to John Stuart Mill's principle of utility. You know what that one is, right?
That one I'm actually not familiar, but I'll listen.
Okay.
I'm sure you.
It's. I won't say it's similar to our Captain Travis Pangburn's maxim, but it is. Let me see if I can look it up for the definition for you. Principle of utility. 1 second, Josh. I apologize.
No big deal. You got it.
All right. So the principle of utility states that actions or behaviors are right and moral insofar as they promote happiness or pleasure, and wrong as they tend to produce unhappiness or pain.
Okay.
So that was what he came up with back in the day.
Happiness is an emotion. Pain is a physical result of something.
So he's saying pleasure good, pain bad. That's all he's really saying.
Okay. I guess that's similar. I don't know if it's the same as like constructive or not, but it does sound similar.
Well, you were talking about like long term.
Bring pleasure are not always good. I'm an ex-smoker of cigarette. Just because it brought me pleasure doesn't mean it was good. And there were things that are bad.
You're right. That long term, short term. What you were talking about a second ago, the long term, short term, deleterious effects of your choice, to stab somebody. That's kind of like a selfish altruism, you know what I mean? Where you can say, well, even if I didn't give a damn about this other person, I don't need to stab them because that's going to cause me a lot of problems. And it's better if they go about their job and provide me utilities, right?
Sure.
So,
I mean, like even if you're just trying to rob people and you're like on the road, sidewalk or something, like it's not productive long term. Even if you maybe got a few people and made a few bucks, like somebody's going to turn you in, hopefully catch you, and like, you're bound to mess up eventually. So long term, it's still bad. In short term, you could run into the wrong person and just get shot then and there. So, I guess I don't think that there's a necessary for sin as much as is what you're doing productive or not for yourself and for others and the environment. That's how I see that.
I got you.
Yeah, I think kind of the Christian perspective, it would push back on that and say, hey, what is your standard of good, right? So we said to be good willing, we're going to pick up trash on the side of the road twice a week. We're going to be productive.
But I'm also hold on, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to admit something. I'm doing it selfishly, like as a Luciferian, and I'm not going to drive too much into that, but like I acknowledge that we are all selfish and that things that we do, like even if you think you're doing something good, like cleaning the trash up. If I was maybe 8 years ago having this conversation, because I've been an ex-Christian for 6, but let's say, if I was in high school doing this, I would say, well, I'm doing this because for everybody else. But the chemical that is produced in your brain that feel good is still there. So like as a Luciferian, like I admit that, that I am doing it because it's an eyesore to me, but I also know that in the process I'm helping others. So like acknowledging that we are selfish and that these impulses that we do are for ourselves first, like makes a difference. I don't, even though I know I'm being productive, I know that I'm not doing it for everybody else. I'm doing it for me, but it helps others in the process. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just want to admit, like I'm doing it out of a selfish act is all I was trying to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of to play off of your trash analogy, and like you said, it is selfish. I would see that as not an objective standard with which to apply to everybody, because you said like people are throwing trash in the yard. Well, obviously they don't believe in what you believe. They don't believe in being productive as you believe in being productive. They don't believe in helping the environment as you help the environment. They believe in being productive by getting the trash out of their car or throwing their trash somewhere that's easier for them to get rid of, right? They think trash helps the environment. So how do you differentiate between what you believe and what they believe?
Well, let's see here. Science, I guess that's kind of a really broad term, but like, if something is like, how can I put this? If something decomposes, like if materials were made to where, like, instead of plastic bags, if we had something, I mean, paper bags don't decompose quite quickly, but like they're preferable over plastic. It's still floating around. It's still trash and stuff. And like, there's, go back to the whole germ theory thing, that causes contamination. Contamination helps germs fester, which causes illness, which will eventually cause negative results to other people as well as the environment and animals. So science would say and has proven that a cleaner environment is a healthier one because it's less likely to produce germs and infestations and plagues, as if it goes on long enough. So like that would be how I would determine which one's more, who is technically correct in that idea, simply by observing. It's not so much of an opinion, I'm right and you're wrong, you're right and I'm wrong, so much as observing what is happening in the environment and which one is productive, which one's not productive. Is it productive to have trash and contamination and increased amount of germs, or is it unproductive to encourage that behavior?
All right, dude. Do you know where the Pangburn Hangout on the Discord where we hang out?
I'm not really sure. I just got on this app myself.
Oh,
I'm not really
that's
sure how to
cool.
use it.
Check our chat. I'm sure somebody will be able to post the link.
I think Travis
we've
posted
had a couple.
I actually clicked on the link from YouTube to get to here, and I'm using this off of the I'm on the app.
Hang on a
app
second.
itself, the listen in app.
I think Travis's YouTube page has the Discord link on it, if I'm not mistaken. Let me.
Yeah, I clicked on that, and then I added this app, and I'm on the app that I clicked on.
Well, the only reason I interrupted you is it's getting late for us, so we're about to have to shut this bad boy down. But there is going to be a continued discussion on the Pangburn Discord server, which we all implore you to please sign up for and come visit us and talk with us. We've got 34 people live. That's excellent. This has been super fun. Please subscribe to the Pangburn Hangout. We appreciate all of you, and we appreciate Josh because basically we all teamed up on him. So
same
when Madison
time
left,
next
he was
week.
all by
Let's
himself.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's go around the room real quick. Jason, Perry, Nivik, Jack. Let's get some final statements, and then we're gonna start closing this bad boy down. Is everybody falling asleep?
Yeah, I am falling asleep, and
I guess my last thing is unless Perry's going.
No, I mean, I was just going to say goodnight to all.
I think God is kind of stuck in metaphysics, and I think metaphysics is postulation that hasn't been met by scientific peer review. And if that postulation does meet scientific peer review, it doesn't end up passing it whatsoever. So that's just all I think. That's for all things metaphysical. That doesn't include just Christianity.
One thing that I would say is that it's crazy that we are organisms So we call ourselves this using noise. And we use these random noises that we make, and we can somehow fucking understand each other. I mean,
It's all a bunch of semantics, man. Like in how we word things and how we change the meanings of words and how we always use different descriptions. It's crazy. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just wanting to agree with you.
No,
like,
yeah, that was good.
100%.
And I mean, I have the common view that everything is subjective, and you know, I'm willing to believe that there is some truth of whatever it is out there. I think logically you can make an argument that there has to be, but based on the noises that we make that are often incompatible with the interpretation of each individual, we're just left in a subjective mess. So, but good night, everyone. Josh, thanks. I appreciate the convo.
Perry, heck yeah, thank you,
Perry.
brother.
Come see us at the Discord, man.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll stop by.
Yeah, please do. Please come by and talk to us.
All right, later, guys.
All right, later, man. Jason, you still with us, bud? Nivik, did you want to say anything before we wrap her up?
I think that religion could potentially be bad for humanity's well-being because you
breaking up, big dog.
You can't hear me.
I can now.
Hello?
Yeah, I can now.
Yeah, it could be bad because you don't have to be held accountable of giving an objective fact and rational explanation and why, and just say simply it's inspired by God, and that's it. So
we're going to continue this conversation.
What could be harmful can what could be harmful?
Don't get Nivik going. It won't stop.
Yeah, and okay, that's so.
We'll all jump in and tackle it.
My point is you can't really tell which is which between God and the devil. Maybe God is the devil, or maybe the devil's God, because I mean, there's no type of accountability in giving a rational explanation in why you're doing something, and you can just say God said so. But how are you going to know necessarily if it's God or the devil? It'd be either or. So it's probably better to not listen to either of them and just be grounded more in reality.
Yep.
Yeah, all great points, Nivik. Anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah.
I wanted to say, Josh, you are very staunch, very resolute, and it's impressive.
Thanks, Tristan. I appreciate it, man. Just a boy with his Bible.
A boy with his Bible.
I'm a man.
Looks like we've asked our host to stay up till 1:30 in the morning doing this. That's why I was kind of helping him wrap things up a little bit, being too big for my britches as always. Thank you, everybody, for calling in. We appreciate you. Subscribe to the Pangburn Hangout. Josh?
Man, that's it. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Man, same time as next Wednesday. Feel free to come chat, talk about why I'm not an atheist. And then I think a follow-on show for next Wednesday will be on eschatology and the study of last things. Do Christians get it wrong when we're talking about Armageddon and Revelation? Like, what do you guys think? So, yeah, come on back and see us. Thanks a lot. Have a great night, everybody.
Love you guys.
We love you.